Order, order. Jonathan Reynolds.
I beg to move that Mr. Speaker do issue his warrant to the Clerk of the Crown to make out a new writ for the electing of a member to serve in this present Parliament for the borough constituency of Gorton and Denton, in the room of Andrew John Gwynn, who since his election for the said borough constituency has been appointed to the office of Steward and Bailiff of His Majesty's Manor of Northstead in the county of York.
The question is that I do issue my warrant to the Clerk of the Crown to make out the new writ for electing of the member to serve in the present Parliament for the borough constituency of Gorton and Denton, in the room of Andrew John Gwynn, who since his election to the said borough constituency has been appointed to the office of Steward and Bailiff of His Majesty's Manor of Northstead in the county of York. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. We now come to questions to the Secretary of State for Works and Pensions. Paul Davies.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and sympathies to you on your recent injury. I can tell you that if you require a work-well appointment with a health practitioner, we have recently had a national rollout, and I'm sure we can arrange that for you. With your permission, I would like to answer questions 1, 3, 7 and 17 together. We believe that work is good for people. That's why we're expanding youth hubs to over 350 areas, ensuring every 16 to 24-year-old, including those not on benefits, can access the support needed to earn or learn. This is part of our effort to take job centre support out of the job centres and meet young people where they are, and it comes on top of the strengthening of our youth guarantee, backed by £820 million of investment to offer training, work experience and subsidised employment to young people who are out of work.
Paul Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently met with James Boyle, who runs Longwood FC, a grassroots football club for young people in my constituency. Longwood FC has had a really positive impact on the mental health and physical well-being of the young people involved, and is a great example of community-led youth engagement. I commend the Government for the investment in such youth engagement through youth hubs across the country. Please can the Minister confirm with me the timetable for the rollout of youth hubs in my constituency?
Mr. Speaker, I congratulate his constituent, James Boyle, for his work running several teams at Longwood FC. This is a great example, and a number of youth hubs are actually located in football clubs and other sporting organisations. Now, I understand that currently Huddersfield Youth Hub serves at least some of my honourable friend's constituents, but if he wants to explore further options, I would encourage him to contact his local job centre so that they can work with local partners to see what is possible.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Minister join me in recognising the work of the Big Onion, who provide skills training, employment support and related services in my Southport constituency, and have supported over 1,400 young people into careers across the wider borough? And will he also set out what further support the department can give to community organisations like theirs, and how their success can be shared across the whole Youth Hope programme?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the Big Onion is one of a number of organisations doing excellent work in trying to help young people into work. It's part of a larger partner group that the local job centre does work closely with. In fact, I believe one of our youth employability coaches is based with the partner group in the town hall once a week. This is exactly why we're expanding youth hubs across the country, so that we can work with other organisations to take the help where young people need it in the community.
Natasha Irons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The expansion of DWP youth hubs and the rollout of Young Futures hubs are a testament to this government's commitment to standing alongside young people and supporting them to succeed. The Centre for Young Lives has called for government departments to work jointly to ensure that there is clear alignment across these hubs to prevent duplication and stop young people from falling through the gaps. So what steps will the government take to ensure that Young Futures hubs and DWP services share information effectively, align their programmes and provide seamless pathways to improve outcomes for young people?
I
thank my honourable friend for her question. One of my first visits in this post was to the youth hub at Selhurst Park, which is close to her constituency as part of our partnership with the Premier League. When I was there, I heard the story of one young person, Erin, who'd had a successful outcome, increased their confidence, got a job, wanted to move on to another one. And it is important that we put in place handover arrangements, particularly for 16 to 18-year-olds, to ensure smooth transition from the earlier years help that they'll get in a Young Futures Hub to the kind of age group that we deal with in youth hubs, which is more focused on employment and careers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of hosting a roundtable with the Jack Petchey Foundation, where the young people from London and Essex spoke powerfully about the barriers that they face, including feeling that there are fewer opportunities for them. So what steps are his department taking to deliver on the government's targets for 2/3 of young people to be in university or apprenticeship, so that young people can gain the skills that they need to achieve their goals?
Well, Mr. Speaker, one of the early steps we've taken is to change the way that the growth and skills levy, the apprenticeship levy, works, so that more of that money is directed towards young people. And that step was necessary because there had been a 40% decline in youth apprenticeship starts over the past 10 years. And if we want to focus on young people and on employment for young people, then we need to make sure they have a good chance of getting an apprenticeship start.
Ashley Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish the Minister well with this initiative, but does he share my concern that as his department seeks to reduce youth unemployment, the Chancellor is doing everything she can to increase it, with her jobs tax increasing unemployment, and of the 170,000 jobs, payroll jobs lost since the election until November 25, 45% of those are young people. This government has cost 150 jobs for young people since it came into office. How does his scheme cope with that?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member will be aware that there are 513,000 more people in work compared to this time last year, and he referred to the Chancellor. I am grateful to the Chancellor for the £820 million funding for the Youth Guarantee, which will bring training help to 300,000 young people and provide subsidised employment for those young people who've been out of work for 18 months. And that's important to get young people into the habit of the discipline, the pride and purpose that comes with having a job.
Miller.
Mr. Speaker, Bicester is one of the fastest growing towns in the country, yet it currently has no dedicated youth hub. In the town centre sits the former Courtyard Youth Arts Centre, which remains largely configured for youth work. The courtyard currently serves a purpose as a limited office space, but could clearly be repurposed back to its original purpose. So does the Secretary of State agree with me that the funding announced in December for youth hubs should prioritise places like Bicester, where existing public assets can be better used to deliver youth services at high value for money for the taxpayer?
Secretary of State.
I thank the honourable member for his question, and I'm aware of the employment and growth generated by Bicester Village as a major retail and visitor location. I understand his representations about having a youth hub that may be associated with that, and we'll look at all these representations because, as I said, we want to get the help to where people are in the local community.
Tim Farrell.
Mr. Speaker, could I just encourage the brilliant team at Kendal Job Centre, who already do a fantastic job reaching out to young people across the Westmoreland area, but also to congratulate the Minister on what is a very positive initiative. Will he bear in mind, though, in communities like mine, where the distances to travel are enormous, that we should be looking, and he should be looking, at having youth hubs outside of the main towns like Kendal and Penrith, and look at Kirkby Stephen, Appleby, Grange, Windermere, so we're close to the people who need those services, and also pay attention and discuss with his Cabinet colleagues the fact that in rural areas like ours, bus service is so awful that young people can't get to those appointments anyway.
I thank the honourable member for his question. In all those beautiful locations he mentioned, tempts me to offer a visit. Let me echo his thanks to the people who work in Kendal Job Centre and the other job centres around the country. I think the issue he raises in terms of transport and distance is a really important one. That's why one of the things that my honourable friend is pioneering is the rollout of mobile job centres located in vans who can visit perhaps a small area 1 or 2 days a week.
Shadow Minister, Rebecca Smith.
Mr Speaker, it strikes me as odd that rather than extolling the virtues of the government's flagship youth guarantee, we've had a number of Labour MPs asking about youth hubs. Now, is this because it is easier to defend the set-up of some youth hubs than feeding back on the rollout of the youth guarantee? We know that since the Labour government came into power, businesses have stopped hiring young people in roles where they could be paying someone more experienced the same amount of money, something that means youth unemployment has gone up since July 2024, the most recent figures showing an increase of 103,000 young people. So, Mr Speaker, does the Secretary of State agree with me that rather than backbench-pleasing schemes, tinkering around the edges of the youth unemployment crisis, what we need is a strong economy with confident businesses actively seeking to employ the hundreds of thousands of talented yet unemployed young people across the country?
Oh, Mr Speaker, it's very nice to see the front bench here. You can never be sure these days who's going to be turning up on the opposite side.
Still time.
So I'm very grateful to her for being here. I take from her question that she's against youth hubs. I have to remind her the initiative began under her government. What we've done is expanded it. It also seems that she's for a cut in wages. We do not think that is the way to go. I do remind her there are more people in work than there were a year ago. The economic inactivity figures are down. Real wages are rising. And as for unemployment, it was going up for the past few years, including while she was in power.
Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, my review of PIP will be co-produced with disabled people. Its steering group of 12 will meet with me and my 2 co-chairs face-to-face for the first time later this week. I can't preempt its choice of priorities and recommendations, but it will draw on the full range of views for a system which is fair to everybody.
Richard Quigley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his response. Many cancer patients receiving PIP and universal credit were alarmed by proposals put forward last summer suggesting that individuals undergoing active cancer treatment might be required to complete a capability for work assessment before accessing these benefits. What assurances can the Department give that people in the midst of cancer treatment will not be burdened with these assessments at such a vulnerable and challenging time?
Minister. Well, my honourable friend raises a good point, but on the work capability assessment, what I can tell him is that people claiming universal credit can be treated as having limited capability for work and work-related activity, LCWRA, if they're being treated for cancer, if they're likely to be treated within 6 months, or are recovering from treatment. And I hope that will be reassuring to his constituents.
Drew Lewin.
Question number 4, please, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And can I thank my honourable friend for this important question about people with health conditions and how we can best support them into work. Good work is generally good for health and well-being, so we want everyone to get work and to get on in work. Through our Pathways to Work guarantee, which is backed by £1 billion of new funding by the end of the decade, and our Connect to Work supported employment programme, more disabled people and people with health conditions will be supported to enter and stay in work.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank my right honourable friend for that answer. I welcome the investment, and I also welcome the news earlier this month from the ONS that since July 2024, the number of people in employment has actually risen by 500,000. I'm sure the Minister will join me in celebrating the fact that there are more people entering the labour market under a Labour government. We should celebrate progress, but must recognise there is more to do. So could my right honourable friend set out what more the government is going to do to support people with health conditions back into the workplace, and in particular build on the success of the Work Well pilot?
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for talking about the Work Well pilot, and I attended a session of Work Well in Cambridge recently and was really impressed. Following the success of the pilots, which have supported over 25,000 people so far, Work Well will expand across all of England, backed up by £259 million investment over 3 years, and could support up to 250,000 people into work. Participants receive proactive early support based on their health-related barriers to employment, such as mental health issues, musculoskeletal problems and other long-term health issues.
David Chadwick.
Mr. Speaker. Access to work is meant to help disabled people stay in employment, yet numerous constituents tell me they've been waiting over 9 months for an assessment and a year or more for changes of circumstances. Those delays are putting jobs and incomes at risk. How many people has the department assessed as losing work because of these delays, and what urgent action is being taken to clear that backlog?
Minister.
So the Honourable Gentleman raises a very important scheme that enables people to move into work and to stay into work and stay in work. I think it's right to say that there have been some issues with access to work. More resources have gone in to ensure that particularly those who are moving into work are prioritised by the scheme. And I'm sure that my right honourable friend, the Minister for Social Security and Disability, who leads on access to work, can write to the honourable member with further details of what more we are doing.
Shadow Minister Peterborough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a result of this government's economic vandalism, unemployment continues to rise, particularly amongst young people and those with disabilities. Now more than ever, it is crucial that we support people back into work. Turning to the Access to Work scheme, it's overly bureaucratic, faces significant delays, and indeed at the weekend, one of my constituents said to me that they were asked by the department official to fill in a fraudulent timesheet in order to be paid on time. So what is the Minister doing to get this programme back on track so that disabled people have the support that they deserve and are contributing to the broader economy?
Well, as I just pointed out and set out to the honourable gentleman, there have been some problems with access to work, and it's this government that's dealing with them. We have put in already resources and particularly focusing on those individuals who are moving into work to make sure that they get access to whatever it is they need to support them in work. So again, I'm very happy to provide further details of what additional support we've put in, but it's this government who's actually dealing with this and actually making sure that people with disabilities and long-term health conditions have what they need to support them into work and to keep them in work.
Question 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I'll answer this question along with question 6. As the Secretary of State set out on the 11th of November 2025, we are retaking the decision made in December 2024 as it relates to the communications on state pension age. We'll update the House on a decision as soon as a conclusion is reached.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was one of 100 MPs that signed a cross-party letter calling on the government to take action for WASPy women. Such is the strength of feeling in my constituency of Newbury that I am regularly contacted about it. In the government's determination, Mr. Speaker, are they planning to consult with the WASPy campaign, especially if it is minded to deny 1950s-born women their lived experience again?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know honourable members on all sides of this House will have been contacted by members in their own constituency who have been affected, and many of us will have family members who have also been in that situation. As I said, we will update the House as soon as a conclusion is reached. We've committed in public to do that within 3 months of the decision in December, so that means there'll be a decision reported to this House before the beginning of March. I would just gently say that we need to be clear about what is at stake in this decision, which is this is a decision relating narrowly to the question about the communication of the state pension age. For many women, including many of my constituents, the issue that they are most actually focused on is the increase and the acceleration in the increase in the pension age that was put in place by the coalition government and which not a single Lib Dem MP voted against back in 2011. I think we should be clear about that, and I'm sure the honourable member will be clear about that with his constituents when they're raising it with him.
Mr. Speaker, across Glastonbury and Somerset, there are over 8,000 WASPy women, including Miriam from Martock, who has lost a staggering £50,000 because of the maladministration state pension age changes. Because she wasn't able to work, she was forced to sell her home and live on released capital. And now, aged 70, she has rejoined the workforce. Miriam and women like her deserve fairness. So will the Minister commit to properly compensating 1950s women, and will the government consult with the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman before finalising its response?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the honourable lady for her question. And I know many of our sympathies would be with Miriam, and I say many of us have constituents who actually at all times as people run up towards state pension age have challenges in the years running up to it. For whatever reason they're unable to work. But in the way she's asked her question, she has rather made the point that I was just setting out. When you talk about losses of 50,000, 60,000, which I do see in letters from constituents, that is not relating to the issue of the communication of the state pension age. The issue she is raising is the increase and the acceleration in the state pension age put in place by a Liberal Democrat government where not a single Liberal Democrat MP voted against it. And it's important to be clear about what is and what is not part of the PSHO's investigation. As I say, it is very important that we take these issues seriously. We should not have seen an acceleration of the state pension age that gave some women only 5 years' notice, put in place by a coalition government. We will not be making those mistakes again.
Chris Vence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My deepest sympathies to your recent injury. Can I, first of all, Mr. Speaker, pay tribute to the Waspie women in my constituency for their tireless campaigning on this issue? Can I ask the Minister, however, to outline the difference this Labour government and his department are making to all pensioners in my constituency of Harlow?
Minister. I thank my honourable friend for his question, but I hope we can reassure the whole world that can't see on the screens that the Mr. Speaker is very much still with us. And we all hope for some time to come. But at the point at which he does decide to become a pensioner, he'll have the full support of this government, which is bringing down waiting lists, benefiting pensioners right across this country, because the biggest single disgrace facing older generations across the UK today has been the state of our NHS. And that is why this government is investing in bringing down waiting lists month after month after month.
Mark Garnet, Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd better add my sympathies as well to your poor leg. Yes. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, the party opposite has performed frankly a spectacular U-turn on its support for Waspie women. But now they find themselves bogged down in judicial reviews and accusations of incompetence. Mr. Speaker, if the government can't even deliver literally nothing for Waspie women without messing up, what hope is there for delivering wider welfare reforms?
Minister. I mean, I just simply can't let the honourable member off. It's the party opposite that made the decisions about accelerating the state pension age, giving women less than 5 years or around 5 years' notice of increase in some cases. That was a choice made by the party opposite. What this party is doing is considering an ombudsman report which the party opposite left sitting on their desks and refused to make a decision on, and that is what we are going to do.
Steve Darling, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prior to the government's decision not to grant compensation to Waspie women, there was a disturbing lack of engagement with the Ombudsman. Since then, the Ombudsman has been able to gain access to the paused action plan, but only after leaving their electronic device at the door. Is the Minister comfortable in the way that this trusted civil servant has been treated?
Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Ombudsman is an important part of the systems we have in place to make sure that the administration of public services is done in the right way. My honourable friend will know that our Permanent Secretary met the Ombudsman before Christmas. A draft of the action plan that he refers to was shared with her to provide her with reassurance that progress was being made on that. As he will be aware, the work on that action plan has been stopped because it was an intrinsic part of the remedy set out in the case last year. And as I've said, the Secretary of State is considering the evidence in the round, and we will report back to this House as soon as a decision is taken.
Mahendra.
Question 8, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there were 2 million working-age PIP claimants before the pandemic. That number is now over 3 million, and it's set to exceed 4 million by the end of the decade. My review will aim to make sure that PIP is fair and fit for the future.
Mahendra.
I thank the Minister for that answer. One of my constituents in Abbots Langley, Down, suffers from a very complicated congenital heart condition which, alongside his hypothyroidism and obstructive sleep apnea, significantly restricts his ability to perform everyday tasks, including work. Despite this, Down has recently had his entitlement to personal independence payment withdrawn. As Darren now awaits a heart transplant, can the Minister outline what steps his department will take to ensure that Darren and his family receive the necessary financial support during this stressful time?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as the honourable gentleman will appreciate, I haven't seen the details of that particular case. I'll be very happy to have a look at it if he'd like me to. There is, of course, the opportunity for mandatory reconsideration and in due course for appeal, but I'll be very happy to look at those details.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the data is segmented, there is a strong correlation between NHS waiting lists and the number of claimants of personal independence payments. So what steps is the Minister taking to ensure that those people who are not able to work because they're on an NHS waiting list are having their health optimised so that they can engage with employment but also can be fast-tracked through the system?
Minister. Well, my honourable friend will welcome, as I do, the dramatic record fall in waiting lists that has been recently reported. But of course we need to make further progress in reducing waiting lists, and we are determined that the assessment for PIP will be fair to everybody. The steering group, as I've mentioned, will meet for the first time over 2 days at the end of this week. And everybody on that group, I know, is going to be focused on making sure we can deliver a fair system for those who need it.
Helen Waitley, Shadow Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the Right Honourable Gentleman became Disabilities Minister, 500,000 more people have gone on to PIP, and the Sickness Benefits Bill is heading up to $100 billion a year by the end of this decade. We know his review isn't due to serve up any savings, but there must come a point where even he would say the country can't afford this. Does he have any ambition to make welfare savings?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've made some very important changes already. We removed, for example, a very serious disincentive to work that was created in the system by the last government in universal credit. That has gone, thanks to the changes in the Universal Credit Act last summer, changes to take effect in April. We do have a broken system. She's absolutely right about that. That's a system that was left behind by the last government, and yes, we are determined to fix it.
Vice Swallow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Number 9, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend will be pleased to know that we have already taken action. In October, we published the Skills White Paper, and we are investing £1 billion in skills packages in sectors that will create hundreds of thousands of jobs over the next 5 years. The budget also set out more than £1.5 billion over the spending review period for investment in employment and skills support, including for the Youth Guarantee and apprenticeships for young people.
Swallow.
Thank you. Can I welcome the commitment in the Post-16 Skills White Paper to support the development of skills passports, because supporting young people to develop essential skills like media and financial literacy, communication and problem solving must be at the heart of our plans to tackle youth unemployment. What conversations has my honourable friend had with the Education Secretary on developing and capturing skills before 16 as well?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his question and confess, Mr. Speaker, that he has had more conversations with the Department for Education on this than I, because I know that he met the Secretary of State recently to discuss this. He will be pleased, I'm sure, to know that this department did pilot last year skills passports in the hospitality sector, working with Hospitality UK. But what I would say to him is that my noble friend, the Skills Minister, her role sits directly between the Department for Education and the Department for Work and Pensions, specifically so that this sort of joined-up work to which he refers can take place.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SAMI is a charity working in Dorset to support disabled young adults into self-employment. They've celebrated 10 years, supported 2,700 people, and have what they tell me is the world's only supported self-employed internship. Young people who have learning disabilities have got great skills for self-employment, but they can't access them because they can't get a unique tax reference because they take more than 12 months to get to earnings levels. So what is the Minister doing to help young people into self-employment so that they can fulfil their destiny?
Minister.
The honourable member raises an important point. Can I begin by commending the charity in her constituency to which she refers? I know that there is an acknowledgement amongst the ministerial team that we need to look particularly at the support available for people looking to move into self-employment, and I'd be very happy to meet with her to discuss the work of the charity further.
Will Brittle.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I also thank my honourable friend for his question on this important issue for the Government. Action to support families includes raising the national living wage, expanding access to free school meals and tripling investment in breakfast clubs. Removing the 2-child limit in universal credit will benefit 1.5 million children across Great Britain, including over 2,500 children in Bolton West. We've also implemented the fair repayment rate for deductions from universal credit and announced a new £1 billion a year package to reform crisis support.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for her response. Almost 4,000 people with jobs in my Bolton West constituency still need universal credit to cope with the cost of living. Heating, water and food bills have been stubbornly high. So what steps is the Minister taking to ensure that families in my constituency get the support they need to pay the bills?
We recognise that too many homes in England struggle to afford heating, and tackling fuel poverty is a government priority. On the 21st of January, we published a new fuel poverty strategy alongside the Warm Homes Plan to better protect fuel-poor households by 2030. And at Budget 2025, we cut energy bills by an average of £150 and expanded the Warm Homes discount, providing a £150 rebate to a further 2.7 million low-income households.
Food and energy costs are remaining high, and there are a significant number of families that are struggling more than they ever have before to try and make ends meet. Has she given any consideration to matching the SNP's Scottish Child Payment in order to ensure that more families with children can be kept out of poverty?
Minister?
Well, we, as I said in my initial answer, we have lifted the 2-child limit in the child poverty strategy. That's something that we know will lift about 450,000 children out of poverty. Combined with all the other measures that we've set out around free school meals, etc., we think there'll be about 550,000 children lifted out of poverty. That is against the backdrop of the 900,000 children who went into poverty during the time of the Conservative governments from 2010 onwards. Of course, we speak all the time to the Scottish Government, and we will continue to have conversations about how we can deal with child poverty.
Daniel Front.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question number 11.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's important that the welfare state is there to support disabled people. Too often in the past, disabled people have been signed off and written off. The state has paid benefits but not done enough to help disabled people into work, so we are expanding employment support for the long-term sick and disabled through, among other things, the Connect to Work programme, which will deliver £1 billion for this purpose in supported employment over the next 3 years. And we're also supporting the Keep Britain Working Report from Sir Charlie Mayfield, aimed at keeping people in work through cooperation with employers.
Can I thank my right honourable friend for his answer? At present, too many young people with EHCPs are being kept on them until 25 years old due to the complexities involved with offering them specialist support required to place them into apprenticeships or work placements. Could the Secretary of State therefore provide an update on what work is being undertaken across government departments to support these young people into career paths to commence their working lives?
Well, Mr Speaker, let me pay tribute to my honourable friend for raising this issue. Ever since he came into this House, including in his maiden speech, he's made a powerful case on behalf of carers and of children with disabilities. And the critical point he is making is that we should not give up on anyone. And he's right that not all the conditions that are identified will be permanent. Not all conditions should be seen as barriers to work, and that we should do everything we can to help disabled people into work.
Cross.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Obviously, the ability to use public transport is vital to allow disabled people or others who are less mobile to access work. Inverurie Station in my Gordon and Buchan constituency has just been removed from the Access for All programme, which provides mobility aids in stations. In this case, a lift will not now be installed. I completely appreciate that Access for All is not a responsibility of DWP, but access and allowing disabled people to get to work is. What conversations has DWP and the Department for Transport had regarding the removal of access for all funding? And does the department share my concern that disabled and less mobile users in my constituency will now have less ability to get to work on public transport?
Well, Mr. Speaker, she's absolutely right that mobility and public transport are essential to help people get to work. And I think on the specifics of her question, the best thing I can do is to get the Department of Transport to write to her with a proper response.
Dame Priti.
Number 12, sir.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my two co-chairs, Sharon Brennan and Dr. Clinton Farquharson, were appointed in October. We've appointed a firm to facilitate the co-production of the review, and drawing on an open expression of interest, appointed a steering group of 12, which will come together for the first time this week.
Dame Priti.
I thank my right honourable friend for that answer. It's clear that the number of people and the conditions eligible for personal independent support has expanded in recent years far beyond what was initially intended, and that reform is needed. It's also clear from conversations with my constituents that there are many people who are desperately disabled who do still need this support. So what reassurance can my right honourable friend give us that after his review we will have a system that looks more specifically at the individual, rather than a sort of checkbox approach that has brought the personal independence payment regime into such disrepute?
Well, the steering group that we have appointed is overwhelmingly made up of disabled people, many of whom have themselves claimed PIP either in the past or are currently doing so. And so the perspective that he's bringing in his very good question will be at the heart of this review. It's a co-produced review. Effective co-production needs transparency and openness. The co-chairs and I are publishing monthly letters, so I hope that he and everyone who's going to be following this with interest will see that the progress that we're making and the determination that we're expressing.
Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could one of the ministers please explain to me and the people of Ashfield why the UK has one of the highest rates of disability in Europe?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure what figures he's drawing attention to. There certainly has been an increase in the incidence of disability. The incidence of benefit claiming has been greater, however, than the increase in the incidence of disability, and that's one of the reasons that we're undertaking this review. What we have to do is make sure that we have a system which is fair, because PIP is a vital benefit for many, but it's also fit for the future.
Nick Smith.
Number 13, please, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Businesses are a really important partner in supporting workers' health. This isn't just an issue for government. I've seen examples of employers doing this in an excellent way, including, for example, when I visited British Airways at Heathrow in November to mark the launch of the Keep Britain Working Review's final report. And Sir Charlie Mayfield, who wrote that report, made a number of recommendations, including the launch of a Vanguard scheme with now over 100 employers taking part in playing a leading role in developing best practice when it comes to workplace health and keeping people in work longer, even if their health declines over time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I thank the Minister for his answer? Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted that we've got a trailblazer pilot in my constituency. On the weekend, in the Times, Alan Milburn emphasised the importance of boosting young people's life chances. So could the Minister please outline how data from the pilot will strengthen delivery to keep people healthy at work?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In terms of South Wales, I opened the Neath Opportunity Hub in October. I announced a further £10 million of funding for the Trailblazer that covers that area. And in terms of the Milburn report, he is doing very important work in reporting on the whole issue of young people, inactivity and work. And the thing that unites these efforts is the belief that work is good for you, that we do not want to see young people graduating from education onto a life on benefits, and that what brings together both the current activity and the future changes that we will need to make.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, can I wish you well, and I hope you'll be spoiled by all the staff around you, and obviously at home as well. You deserve it. You deserve it. Question number 14, please.
Mr. Speaker, the review will be, as I've said, co-produced with disabled people to put lived experience at its heart. It will engage very widely to bring together the full range of voices, including those of people with arthritis and musculoskeletal conditions.
Thank you very much for that answer, very positive. As the Minister will appreciate, people living with arthritis and other musculoskeletal conditions make one of the largest groups of PIP claimants. Should the previous PIP process have continued, over 77% of claimants living with arthritis and other musculoskeletal conditions would have lost their claims. The Minister's a good man. Could I ask the Minister, please, would he agree to having a round table with Arthritis UK and myself with people living with arthritis organised at his convenience so that the Minister can hear directly from those impacted? Thanks so much.
Well, the Honourable Gentleman makes a very interesting suggestion. I'll be very happy to have the round table that he's called for.
Debbie Abrahams, Chair of the Select Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Number 15.
So stay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I met with Sir Charlie Mayfield, who is author of the Keep Britain Working Report, to discuss progress. He reported there are now over 100 employers on board to act as vanguards, including British Airways, Sainsbury's, Holland and Barrett, and a number of smaller employers. And the aim is to develop a healthy life cycle of work throughout people's careers. And we are also setting up the Health Information and Data Unit that Sir Charlie recommended in his report.
Debbie Abrahams.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And as my right honourable friend knows, Sir Charlie made a number of recommendations, including setting up or providing evidence, rather, of the returns on investments that would incentivise more businesses to take part in preventative measures to ensure that their workers remain healthy and in work. Now, given there's an excellent network of academic centres across the UK, how will the proposed Workplace Health Intelligence Unit harness their expertise and ensure that we are reducing health inequalities, which also dampen productivity and economic growth?
So state.
Well, my honourable friend raises a number of issues. As I said, we are setting up the unit that St Charlie recommended. I very much hope that it will work with academic expertise across the country. And in terms of her initial point about this being a win-win for employers, I think it's a very important point, because if they let someone go, they lose that experience, have to go through the effort of hiring somebody new and training them up. So it is a worthwhile experience to try to help someone stay in work if they have a decline in their health over a period of time. It's good for the employee and good for the employer.
Antonio Banks.
Number 16, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Job Centre Plus offers tailored, flexible advice and support to help individuals to get into work and overcome any barriers to employment. Work coaches offer all claimants a comprehensive menu of help, including referral into skills provision and job search support. And this can include referral to local ESOL provision.
Antonio Banks.
I thank the Minister for her answer. I recently visited the Tipton Job Centre Plus, and I want to pay tribute to the great work of the staff based there in what is a really tough jobs market. What they said to me is that they would value is the ability to refer job seekers onto an intensive ESOL course with the expectation that they attend every weekday for a number of months to tackle the key barrier to sustainable employment for many, which is a lack of English skills for work. Would the Minister consider engaging with our combined authority to pilot an intensive mandatory ESOL intervention to get locals into work and raise incomes in my area?
Well, first of all, can I thank my honourable friend for her interest in and her visit to the Tipton Job Centre Plus and her kind words about the staff there. I know that Job Centre Plus in Tipton have been reviewing local ESOL availability, and I welcome and are welcoming the work with the combined authority to look at expanding provision to ensure demand is met so more claimants can move into work.
Begashanko Topidals.
Speaker.
No stay.
Mr. Speaker, since the new year, we've had the first expressions of interest from firms who want to participate in the Youth Guarantee. We've announced our intention to change benefit entitlement for people in mental health hospitals convicted of serious violent crimes. We've announced reforms to the Disability Confidence Scheme to encourage more employers to make their workplaces suitable for disabled employees, and we've introduced the legislation to lift the two-child limit, which will have its second reading in this House next week.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Whether it's Keir, Alstom or others, apprentices in Derby are thriving at our large manufacturing companies. But we also want to see our small and medium-sized businesses being able to take on more apprentices. Could the government set out what is being done to help smaller businesses take on more apprentices?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me congratulate him and everyone who is involved in Team Derby in the excellent record in terms of training and employment there. Around 40% of all apprenticeship starts are in small and medium employers. They will benefit from the £725 million funding we announced at the budget, which includes fully funding SME apprenticeships for eligible people aged under 25. And as he'll be aware, employers are not required to pay anything towards these employees' national insurance.
Secretary of State Helen Wortley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under this Labour government, the number of people on benefits is soaring. Nearly 1 million young people not in education, employment or training, and over 700,000 university graduates are now out of work and on benefits. So many young people putting in hundreds of job applications and getting hundreds of rejections. This government is killing their jobs and their dreams by taxing job-creating businesses into oblivion. What does the Secretary of State have to say to these young people?
Mr. Speaker, what I have to say to these young people is that the rise in graduate inactivity happened under the last government. Economic inactivity is down by 450,000 since the last election. Where there is a critical problem, and she's right, is in NEET numbers, which have been rising for 4 years. The difference is we are doing something about it through the Youth Guarantee, which has £820 million behind it, and changing her record on apprenticeships, which saw a 40% fall in youth apprenticeship starts over 10 years.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you're a young person, you are not going to be reassured. But no surprise, what else can he say? The Prime Minister is out there too busy blocking rivals for his job, while a generation of young people pay the price for his weakness. And so are taxpayers footing a ballooning benefits bill. Now is not the time for another review or scheme or slogan. What young people want is the chance to get a decent job and get on in life. Surely he agrees it's time to scrap the job-killing red tape in the Employment Rights Bill and cut taxes for businesses so they can give young people the chance to get off welfare and into work.
Well, Mr. Speaker, people want to stand for my party. People want to leave hers, and are doing it day by day. We do want to give hope to young people. That's why we put the Youth Guarantee in place. That's why we're changing the apprenticeship system. Two things she could have done while in office, while the NEET numbers were rising year on year, but utterly failed to do so.
Josh Dewberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Julie, a single mum of two, had a successful career in marketing, but had to quit after battling with depression stemming from undiagnosed ADHD. Julie's been stuck in a cycle of struggling to get treatment and diagnosis on the NHS and having to go back to work before she's ready, a story sadly echoed across so many of my constituents who struggled with fragmented mental health services and the lack of employment support due to cuts made by the previous government. Could the Minister update the House on the work she's doing with her health counterparts to make sure people struggling with mental ill health can recover and get back to work?
Minister.
Well, I meet regularly with my colleagues in the Health Department, particularly because of the important work that the Joint Work and Health Directorates are doing to get people into work and to support people in work with health conditions, including chronic mental health conditions. One of our programmes is the Employment Advisors in Talking Therapies, and that's specifically targeting people with mental health conditions.
Steve Darling, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The SACE review investigated the carers allowance scandal, identifying that almost 87,000 carers were affected. The government are planning to write off 26,000 carers' debts. Does this mean that the Minister believes that 60,000 carers are guilty of fraud?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Liz Sace did a superb job. I think he would agree with me about that. We commissioned her straight after the general election, and we've accepted all but 2 of the recommendations she made in her report. We're working through the detail now of how to implement those recommendations. We'll set out the proposals and the details as soon as we're able to. At the moment, we're working with carer organisations on communications with the carers affected to make sure that they're right. And I'll look forward to giving you more details as soon as they're available.
Martin Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of the government's commitment to delivering employment and opportunities for young people of all backgrounds, could the Minister set out what recent progress has been made in establishing the Youth Guarantee Scheme in Scotland?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the Youth Guarantee Scheme will be delivered across Great Britain, and this includes the Jobs Guarantee Scheme that I mentioned earlier, where from the spring we'll be providing over 1,000 fully subsidised jobs in 6 areas across the UK, including Central and East Scotland, ahead of the national rollout, which will come later this year.
In room.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of my North Devon constituents is a disabled Royal Navy veteran whose migration to universal credit has been a nightmare, including incorrect payments, long delays to identify verification and a lack of help with accessibility. I've received no response to their case since the 13th of November last year. Does the Minister agree with me that this falls short of what people should expect from DWP, and will he help me get this resolved?
Minister.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about the honourable gentleman's experience. We are in now the most difficult part of the transition as people who were previously on employment and support allowance move over to universal credit. We've introduced an enhanced support journey to try and simplify this. I am keeping a very close eye on how it's going, and if you'd like to send me the details of that particular case, I'll certainly look at that.
Jack Abbott.
This week has been an incredibly good one for jobs, investment and opportunity in Ipswich. Halo, one of the biggest tech firms in the UK, are moving the global HQ into the centre of town, creating 1,000 jobs, many of them for graduates. And SIS will see unveil plans for a new bus depot, which create 400 jobs, 75% of them from local areas. So this has been a brilliant week, but I know there's much more to be done. So could the government outline what extra steps it's taking to get young people back into training and employment?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me congratulate the honourable member for the fantastic work that I know that he's done in campaigning for the investments in and around his constituency. Major infrastructure investments like Sizewell should be an opportunity for local employment, for local training, for increasing the skills of local people, and we want our youth guarantee and the changes that we're making in the apprenticeship system to support those aims.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Friday, I met a constituent who has been told she's losing all of her child maintenance payments because her ex-husband has simply told the CMS that he's moved abroad, something my constituent knows to be entirely false. So what steps will the government take to better verify these claims from people trying to get out of their child maintenance payments?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very sorry to hear about the case that the honourable gentleman raises. Clearly, if there is evidence of false claims being made in applications, I'd be very grateful for him sharing that information with me directly, and I will be sure to come back on him to him on that to ensure that it is fully investigated. If we are coming back on anybody, hopefully it will be the gentleman to whom he has referred.
Simon Offer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Stroud, we've secured £90,000 in funding for a scheme that places employment social prescribers and occupational therapists into GP practices. They support people who are out of work and in receipt of benefits to return to employment, improving their health and also reducing their reliance on welfare. So, will the Minister consider rolling this model out nationally, recognising that work is often the best cure for sickness?
Minister.
Well, first of all, can I pay tribute to my honourable friend for the meeting that we had on this very subject just a few months ago and raising this issue about how important it is to get people back into work. I know there are lots of good examples of GPs who are doing this around the country, and I look forward to seeing what more we can do to work with the honourable gentleman and other GPs to make sure we get as many people back into work who are not in work at the moment due to ill health.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I have two constituents who have been awaiting work capability reassessment since July and September 2024. That's over a year, stuck in limbo, rather than preparing to get back to work. Will the Minister confirm what my team has been told, that extreme waiting times are now normal in the Department, and set out what they are doing to break this backlog?
Minister.
Well, we're certainly addressing the backlog, but if she'd like to send me the details of those two cases, I'll certainly investigate.
Okay.
Tom Hayes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituent Stephen Sherwood has complex needs and learning difficulties. Stephen couldn't understand changes to universal credit. He needed guidance that never came and lost financial support that he badly needed. Stephen and his mum Nicola rightly want to know, does DWP involve people with complex needs and learning difficulties in the design of system change, and will the government do more to ensure that such people have these changes explained to them in ways that they can understand?
Well, my honourable friend raises a very good point. As I've said, the process that we're going through in the migration, it is the most difficult part now as people move from ESA onto universal credit. We have introduced this enhanced support journey to assist people like my honourable friend's constituent going through this. But I am looking forward to meeting him in a couple of weeks' time to discuss lessons from this particular case.
Dr. Lucan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And in the budget, the Chancellor froze thresholds which brings pensioners, state pensioners, into paying tax. Now, this was raised with the Chancellor, who said that she didn't want that to happen and she would create a workaround. However, only 2 weeks ago, we voted on the finance bill, which the Labour Party pushed through, which means, as it stands, they will pay tax on their state pensions. So what is the DWP doing to make sure that pensioners will not pay tax on their state pension or have to do a tax return?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for his question. It has been confirmed that those whose income is only the basic level of the basic state pension or the new state pension will not be required to pay tax next year, because you've seen the level of the personal allowance set remaining above the level of a new state pension. What the Chancellor said at the budget is that in future years we will make sure that no pensioner will be required to fill in a self-assessment or indeed a simple self-assessment form for any tax that is due, because the new state pension level is above that of the personal allowance.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Speaker. Well, a constituent of mine disclosed full details of her change in circumstances to the Department, but the Department, although they admitted it was their mistake, they had received that information, they had repeatedly failed to update their records, they still sent her a very, very threatening letter. Now, whilst I fully support the need to protect the public purse, would the appropriate minister agree to meet with me to discuss how the Department could improve their updating procedures, reduce the occurrence of overpayments, and treat claimants more considerately when they've received overpayments through no fault of their own?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'll be very happy to meet my honourable friend for that discussion.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. People that come here and make this their home are welcome to work and to pay their taxes. However, over the weekend, ministers may have seen reports of foreign career criminals who've been spared prison now claiming universal credit. Taxpayers are going to be outraged by this fact. What action will the minister take to actually ensure that only the people that are entitled to receive universal credit do so, and career criminals do not?
Minister.
Well, the honourable gentleman raises a very serious issue. Payment accuracy and ensuring only those who are eligible to claim benefits is incredibly important for confidence in the system. I haven't seen the specifics of the case to which he refers, but where we become aware that these errors have been made, we do seek to claim that money back. We have taken further powers in the Public Authorities Fraud, Error and Recovery Act to take action against the sort of serious and organised criminals that the honourable gentleman refers to, and I'm pleased to say that that act received royal assent last month.
White.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the Minister inform the House what discussions he has had on removing universal credit from convicted killers who are currently serving a sentence in a psychiatric hospital?
The Secretary of State.
Mr Speaker, I had a number of discussions, including with victims' families, and it is important to stress that if someone is sentenced to a psychiatric hospital, their care and maintenance is paid for by the state in any case. and we therefore propose a change to the previous system that will stop the build-up of, in some cases, large sums of money in continued benefit payments.
Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Andrew co-founded Adzuna, a job search website built on AI. Their research shows that existing AI tools could actually improve the DWP's service and create 250,000 more jobs per year. It's reported that the new rebuild of the service, though, is not going to include these AI tools. So can the Secretary of State give the House reassurance that we are going to incorporate these new AI tools into the rebuild of the service so that we do get that employment boost?
Minister. Well, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his question? He will forgive me if, for commercial reasons, I don't confirm that Adzuna's specific tool or any other would be part of the work that we are taking forward. But what I can tell the honourable gentleman is that we will be bringing forward a new AI tool in the coming months that will include not only find a job options, but CV support, interview training, and various other cutting-edge tools that will support people up and down this country into work, utilising the power of AI.
Joanna Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund currently supports around 20% of Renfrewshire Council's employability budget. Given that funding is due to come to an end, can my right honourable friend outline what steps he will take to support employability services in Renfrewshire going forward?
Well, Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend will have heard me refer to the Youth Guarantee being a GB-wide scheme, which will help people in Scotland. But I know that she'll agree with me when I point out that the Scottish Government has had the most generous financial settlement since devolution was introduced. And I would hope that some of that will go towards the kind of priority that she's outlined in her question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent has been waiting more than 5 months trying to get a response from DWP about his UC claim. I've now taken up the case and I'm also experiencing unacceptable delays, 15 weeks and counting, when the supposed turnaround is 15 days. Can the Minister please say what action he is taking to ensure that DWP responds to constituents and to MPs within reasonable timescales?
Minister.
Can I begin, Mr. Speaker, by apologising to the honourable lady for the experience that both she and her constituent have encountered. She would be pleased to know that I met recently with our newly appointed complaints lead and indeed the independent complaints case examiner who is raising concerns about the trends that she is seeing. We are putting in place a range of interventions that take us forward in a positive way to improve our complaints handling process, and I will be happy to share more detail with her directly.
Bill Duncan Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation and Trussell Trust are campaigning for an essentials guarantee that would ensure benefits cover the necessities for living. Does the Minister agree that the welfare state should be a universal safety net, not a trapdoor?
So state.
I very much agree that the welfare state should be there to help people and to help people change their circumstances, not just to keep them in their circumstances. And I'm pleased to report that we have now put in place the Crisis and Resilience Fund that will help people in the most desperate circumstances and guaranteed it funding for the next 3 years.
Mr. Smart.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Harry has a learning disability and he's so brilliant he has not one but 2 jobs. His mum Helen is his appointee and she's not allowed to access his access to work paperwork online. This means she has to print out 24 bits of paper, get it manually signed and pay to post it in. This is crackers in 2025. Please could the Minister undertake to look... 2026, thank you. Please could the Minister undertake to look at Harry's case to make sure that appointees like Helen don't find it too hard for access to work and we can keep brilliant people like Harry in work.
The honourable lady makes a very good point, and it's one of the reasons that we are reforming access to work. We consulted on reform in the Green Paper last year, and I think she's right. We do need a less bureaucratic system around access to work, not least for appointees.
Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And may I also wish you a speedy recovery. As I understand it, the other fellow came off much worse. The Isle of Wight NHS Trust... sorry, I couldn't have it. On the Isle of Wight, our NHS Trust takes students who would otherwise have ended up as NEETs and takes them through a pre-apprenticeship scheme, which not only gives them the skills, but more importantly, the confidence to go on to an apprenticeship and then work. Can I encourage the Secretary of State to come and visit the Isle of Wight to see the great work they do and encourage other employers to do the same?
Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I'll certainly come to the Isle of Wight if I can, diary permitting, but the issue that he raised about confidence is crucial. Time and time again, when I speak to our work coaches, they say that building the confidence of young people to get out there and apply for things and go into new and unfamiliar circumstances is a critical part of their work.
Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Sam has been failed by the CMS. Her ex-partner hid a load of his income. She knows this because the CMS sent her the evidence and then they denied it, and any reference to onward referrals are denied. She's stuck in the bureaucracy. It is an unacceptable situation, and by the time the back payment is through to her children, she says she'll be passing it straight through to the grandchildren. This is a total disgrace. Women shouldn't be treated like this and subjected to this kind of failing bureaucracy. Can ministers have a look into it, and would they have a look into Sam's case, please?
I will, Mr. Speaker, have a look into the general issue, but also if the honourable member could share directly with me details of Sam's case, I'd be very happy to look at it for him.
Right, we'll let the front benches change over. Right, we now come to the urgent question. Dame Priti Patel,
To ask the Secretary of State for the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs if she'll make a statement on the government's plans for the Diego Garcia military base and British Indian Overseas Territory Bill.
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I hope you make a swift recovery. I mean, injured my ankle just before Christmas. I know how painful it can be, but wish you very well in your recovery. Mr. Speaker, on the 22nd of May, the Diego Garcia Treaty was signed and laid before the House. As the Defence Secretary told the House on the day of signature, the treaty secures the strategically important UK-US military base on the island of Diego Garcia. The base, as I've said in this House many times, is essential to the security of the UK and our key allies, including the United States. It's essential to keeping British people safe, and it's also one of our most significant contributions to the transatlantic defence and security partnership because it enables rapid deployment of operations and forces across the Middle East, East Africa and South Asia, helping combat some of the most challenging threats, including from terrorism and hostile states. And its unique strategic location creates real military advantage across the Indo-Pacific. And the facility has helped also to collect data used to support counter-terrorism operations, including against high-value Islamic State targets in recent years. We've been clear on many times in this House, Mr. Speaker, the UK will never compromise on our national security. And as we've been repeatedly making clear, the agreement we have struck is vital for protecting our national security, guaranteeing the long-term future of a vital base for both the UK and the US, which had been under threat, as the opposition fully understood and were briefed on. The deal secures the operations of the joint UK-US base on Diego Garcia for generations. It was publicly welcomed by the United States, Australia and all other Five Eyes partners, as well as key international partners, including India, Japan and South Korea. And just last week, Mr. Speaker, the House spent 2 hours debating the Lord's amendments to the bill. The opposition will know, of course, that programming of business in the other place is a matter for them and not for us. However, Mr. Speaker, the Lord's consideration of Commons amendments has been delayed because the opposition tabled a wrecking amendment hours before the other place rose, and a day, well, I mean, I think this just shows the measure of them, Mr. Speaker, and a day before a scheduled debate. This is an irresponsible and reckless behaviour from the official opposition in the Second House, using programming tactics to frustrate the implementation of a treaty on a critical national security matter. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, it stands in stark contrast to the very reasoned, constructive criticisms and questions and suggestions that have been made by members from other parties, and indeed by crossbenchers, which we've engaged with in good faith at every stage and will continue to do so. This is on the official opposition, Mr. Speaker, because this amendment is not only unnecessary, but it is toying with our national security. And it is only right, Mr. Speaker,
that we take steps to consider the next steps on programming, because we remain confident this treaty is the best way forward. The Lords will consider the Commons amendments in due course. This will be announced in the usual way. The government is committed to the deal which protects the joint UK-US base on Diego Garcia. Some have sought to sabotage the process through procedural motions and parliamentary stunts. We are instead focused on delivering this bill to protect our national security.
Priti Patel.
Speaker, well, Labour's Chagos surrender humiliation continues. Today, they were hoping to force through in the House of Lords their surrender bill, giving away territory, handing over £35 billion to a foreign government allied to China and betraying Chagosians. But after the Conservatives pointed out on how their surrender would violate our existing international obligations and challenged the government, they pulled the bill from the House of Lords order paper today, rather than being defeated. And I have a copy here for the Minister to have a read. And in their rush to appease the wishes of their left-wing lawyer friends, Labour overlooked this very 1966 treaty between the UK and the US, which states that the British Indian Ocean Territory shall remain under the United Kingdom's sovereignty. So can the Minister tell us, does he accept that the bill and the treaty violates this very 1966 treaty with the US, and following the US President saying that the UK has given away the Chagos Islands for no reason whatsoever, there is no doubt that China and Russia have noticed this act of total weakness, and adding the UK has given away extremely important land is an act of great stupidity. Can he tell us what discussions have taken place with the US administration in the last few days, and if they have communicated that they are now reviewing the deal? Britain's weak Prime Minister seemed to suggest in the House last week that he was being bullied by the President. Now, that's quite a personal statement, Mr. Speaker. So has the Prime Minister had a direct discussion with the President in the last week about Chagos? And can the Minister confirm that any changes to our 1966 treaty with the US will undergo parliamentary scrutiny under the 21-day CRAG process, with time given for debates and votes? Does the Minister accept that it would be logical for this House to consider amendments of the 1966 treaty with the US before proceeding with this bill? And can the Minister confirm that Jonathan Powell, friend of China, upon appointment as the British Indian Overseas Territory Envoy and before becoming National Security Advisor, accelerated negotiations with Mauritius to surrender the Chagos Islands? Mr. Speaker, it's time Labour saw sense and scrapped this treaty and stood up for Britain.
Well, I did think perhaps, Mr. Speaker, that she might have something more. But the reality is that the tone, the braying, the noise, Mr. Speaker, I think reflects absolutely that this is a simple political stunt from the opposition. And I think deeply, deeply regretful, Mr. Speaker, when we're talking about such important matters of national security. Now, she asked specifically about the US-UK exchange of notes. I mean, I genuinely am surprised about this, Mr. Speaker, because we've been clear throughout that before the UK can ratify the treaty, we will need to do the following: pass primary and secondary legislation, update the UK-US agreement, the exchange of notes, and put in place arrangements on the environment, maritime security and migration. Now, perhaps the opposition have only just clocked onto this and the need to update the UK-US agreement. But we actually told the Noble Lord Callanan, in fact, my honourable friend in the other place, answered his question on the 22nd of December, where she said talks are ongoing to update the UK-US exchange of letters on the operation of the Diego Garcia base. We've been clear about this throughout. So to try and present this as some sort of gotcha that we haven't looked at the law, I mean, it is absolute nonsense, Mr. Speaker, and it is quite frankly deeply, deeply irresponsible. We have made excellent progress towards finalising an updated UK-US agreement. And of course, Mr. Speaker, for the record, because they won't have looked at any of the history of this, the UK-US agreement has been updated in 1972, 1976, twice, 1987 and 1999. So this is a regular process. We've had to update it for a range of reasons in the past. We were always clear about the need to put in place the necessary domestic and international legal processes in place to deal with this. So the idea that this is something new, some sort of gotcha or otherwise, is just simply for the birds, Mr. Speaker. Now, she asked also about the contact with the United States. We remain engaged with the United States on a daily basis on matters relating to our national security, and we will continue to engage with them on this important matter and, of course, engage around the the importance of the deal to secure US and UK interests, and of course allay any concerns, as we have done throughout this process. There's nothing new in that, and it's absolutely right that we do so. Her claims about China were simply rubbish, Mr. Speaker, and I'm really surprised that they continue to play these shocking party political games.
Dan Carden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sorry I'm the only one on this side speaking here, and I have huge respect for my honourable friend, and I fear I'm not going to say anything he particularly likes. But I have followed this as closely as possible, and I've gone along with the government to this point. But it has been against my instincts, and I still cannot understand exactly what we are doing here. International agreements do not protect us against our enemies or our allies. Sovereignty does. And I genuinely think the people we represent will be asking, why can the Prime Minister not step forward, assert sovereignty over these islands, and make clear that we have the military defence to defend them?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend perhaps hasn't been in some of the previous debates on this, but I've set out on a number of occasions why. And again, a lot of noise from the other side, Mr. Speaker. But of course, they knew the problem here. They knew the risk to the operations of the base. That's why they engaged in 11 rounds of negotiations over this, Mr. Speaker. So I say again, the operations of this base were under threat. We're not willing to play roulette with our national security, and therefore we have put in place the necessary steps to protect, and this is the crucial thing, the operations of that base and the full abilities to do so in the way that they are today. From the threats that existed to it. They put our national security. He says, what threats? I've set those out on many, many occasions in this House. And what's more, we have secured better protections in this deal than they attempted to negotiate, including the buffer zone and the protections in relation to foreign forces on the outer islands. That has been the priority for us, securing our national security and securing the operation of this base for us and for our allies.
Callum Millar, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Liberal Democrats have argued consistently that Chagosians' rights to self-determination should be honoured. So even at this 11th hour, I want to ask the government to reconsider its obstinate refusal to give Chagosians a voice over the homeland from which they were shamefully and violently removed. Will the Minister support the Liberal Democrat amendment in the other place, which seeks to secure binding guarantees from the government of Mauritius? The government has also failed to address concerns shared across this House around the vast sums of public money due to be sent to the government of Mauritius over the lifetime of this agreement. We should not sign 99 cheques today that Mauritius can cash over the next century. So will the Minister support the Liberal Democrat amendment in the other place to give Parliament annual scrutiny of the payments made to Mauritius? Mr. Speaker, I encourage the Minister, in light of the shifting US position, to consider soberly the approach the government is taking, and I urge him to accept the Liberal Democrat amendment in the other place for a pause while the US position is clarified.
Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman, indeed his colleagues in the other place, have given serious and considered reflections on this bill a number of times. We've discussed them privately and indeed responded to them in the other place, and certainly we listen very closely to what he said on a number of issues, including continuing to update the Houses on the cost issues and other matters, although, again, I'm sure he agrees with me that some of the wild figures we've heard being quoted are simply not accurate or based in any kind of fact. He raises the issue about the Chagosians. He knows that I and others have engaged with Chagosian communities on a number of occasions. There, of course, have been also a wide range of views expressed from Chagosian communities. He knows that a referendum would not have resolved this long-standing issue between the UK and Mauritius, which required state-to-state negotiations. And indeed, the courts here, noting the conclusion of the ICJ on the 2019 advisory opinion, have proceeded on the basis that the relevant right to self-determination in the context of bias was that of Mauritians rather than of Chagosians. And that remains the fact. But I do appreciate what he says about Chagosian communities. He knows my commitment to them and to listening to the range of views and trying to do the right thing, including acknowledging the deep wrongs of the past. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to engage with him and his colleagues, and I'm very happy to meet with him to discuss amendments in the other place.
Julian Lewis.
The Minister is keeping up a brave face in public, but when he goes back to his colleagues, he'll have to tell them that the only contribution from his own backbenches was to disagree with the government's position and to do so bravely and with articulation. Does the Minister accept that the reason why this bill may not go through is as a result of the work of the Conservative opposition in both houses of Parliament and the work of the leader of the Reform Party in Mr. Trump's ear. And doesn't this show what can be achieved when two parties make common cause in a very worthwhile aim to achieve a vital objective?
Well, I have to say, I mean, that comment speaks for itself, Mr. Speaker. I'm absolutely astonished. Perhaps he's next on the defection list. I mean, absolutely extraordinary comments. Mr. Speaker, we've made very, very clear about how this deal supports our national security interests and that of the UK and the US.
Do you want to withdraw that comment?
I withdraw, sir.
I think the tone, again, that we're seeing from the other side tells everybody in the public what exactly is going on here, which is political game playing. And of course, there were hundreds of votes the other day to ensure that this bill went through, and that's because it has the consent of this House, and it is deeply irresponsible for opposition lords in the other place to be playing reckless games with our national security.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll tell the Minister what is deeply irresponsible, and that is to give away our national sovereignty, to damage our national security interests. That's what's deeply irresponsible, Minister. And thank heavens, the US administration have now realised that they were deliberately misled by our national security advisor, deliberately misled by the Foreign Office, and therefore the Speaker is listening intently. As I say, the National Security Advisor deliberately misled the American administration, and they are angry. They are furious, Minister, at what has gone on. And that is why the American administration have changed their tune. So will the Minister confirm that if the Americans will not sign the update to this agreement, then this is dead and buried, and, Minister, who will resign?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to take any lessons in national security from the fake patriots over there. And quite frankly, a party whose leader in Wales took bribes from Russia to promote narratives from the Kremlin. I think members opposite ought to be very, very careful about who they associate with.
Sir Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister, who is normally a reasonable fellow,
What happened?
always makes the point that the last Conservative government started the negotiations. But does he now understand that, firstly, we were unable to conclude them, and secondly, we would never have agreed or concluded the very one-sided deal that he and his colleagues have so naively and mistakenly agreed?
Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, he'd like to publish what costs the government then were willing to pay for this deal.
Richard Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In answer to a written question recently, a Defence Minister confirmed that, quote, all decisions on whether to approve foreign nations' use of military bases in the UK for operational purposes considers the legal basis and the policy rationale for any proposed activity. Can the Minister confirm that this commitment to the use of military bases in the UK by allies such as the US also applies to the military base at Diego Garcia?
Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid I might need to write to him with the detail on that very specific point, but I can absolutely assure him that our operation of military bases, whether alone or with allies, is always in accordance with international law, and that's absolutely why we followed the process that we have in updating the different pieces of legislation and other agreements that need to be updated.
So, Bernard Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When did the Minister first learn that the United States could effectively veto this agreement with the Mauritius?
Mr. Speaker, again, I don't really understand the premise of the question. We've always been clear that we would work closely with our key defence and security ally of the United States in securing the base on Diego Garcia, and we've set out on a number of occasions the processes by which we'd need to bring this treaty into force. There is simply no sort of gotcha moment here. This has been clear. It was made clear to the Lords in the other place, but perhaps they haven't been reading the answers to the questions.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it clear that the right honourable gentleman, normally very benign, is now rather tetchy?
Yes.
And I just say to him, if he was so sure of what he says, why didn't he make a statement rather than be dragged to the floor of the House by the opposition? And I also say one final question to him, which is, when the previous Foreign Secretary made the clear statement that if the US says no, this deal is off. Was he referring to the 1966 arrangements, or was he just doing it off his cuff?
Mr. Speaker, we've always been clear that we would work closely with the United States to put in place the agreements to protect our national security and the operations on Diego Garcia. That's exactly what we've done. That's exactly what this bill and this deal secures. I've set very clearly the importance of updating the exchange of notes. That's been clear throughout. It was made clear in the other place before Christmas. It's been made clear on a number of occasions. So really, Mr. Speaker, there is nothing new here.
Jeremy Corbyn. Mr. Speaker, would the Minister acknowledge that ever since the brutal removal of Chagosians from their homes in the 1970s and 1980s, their one unifying factor has been their determination and desire to return? And would he also confirm that international law indicates that the Chagos Islands, the archipelago and Diego Garcia should both be, under decolonisation statutes, handed over to Mauritius? And that the only way of guaranteeing the right of return of Chagos Islanders is for the House to accept the treaty that the government has negotiated and is supported by the Chagos Refugee Association, largely based in Mauritius and the Seychelles, and some of the Chagos Islanders that live in this country. There is, of course, there's debate. Nothing wrong with that. But this guarantees a right of return.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've been clear on a number of occasions about this, and he sets out very many important aspects of the history on this, and of course, importantly, puts on record the views of a range of other Chagosian groups who speak in support of this treaty and in support of this deal, primarily as well because of that reason, that this gives them the best chance to be able to resettle on the outer islands, and we continue to support them in that measure, and we'll continue to engage with all Chagosian communities, even, of course, those who disagree with this deal, but to ensure that their needs and concerns are heard both in this country but also internationally. And that's why we're also capitalising the Chagosian Trust Fund.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I think it is an absolutely unprecedented event for me to be in something like this and there be only one government backbencher who has even spoken in this debate, and he very bravely spoke against this deal. It is very important that the sovereignty of this island remain British, and that was something that was highlighted in the Labour manifesto, which said that defending our security also means protecting the British overseas territories. Labour will always defend their sovereignty and right to self-determination. So can I just suggest a gentle down ramp for the Minister, for whom I have a lot of admiration, which is just to simply not find the time in the other place to progress things and allow prorogation to just gently wash this particular piece of legislation out of
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've been clear throughout that the national security of our country is what comes first, and the national security of our allies and our partners, which is why the previous government was engaging to do a deal on this, because they recognised the threats to the operations of the base. We concluded that deal. We have a deal that secures the future operations on Diego Garcia well into the next century, and that is the most important thing in this whole process.
Sammy Wilson.
Speaker. Unusually, the Minister has resorted to bluster today, accusing those of us who oppose this treaty of being irresponsible and toying with the security of the country. Does he not accept that it is the government which is toying with the security of this country, ignoring the views of the Americans who use the Diego Garcia base, ignoring the fears of the Chagosians and also the drain on public finances? And is it not the government that is using its majority and its members as pawns to push through a deal which it knows is wrong, is unfair and will be dangerous for the country?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I should clarify. I wasn't referring to him. I was responsible to the irresponsible procedural game playing by opposition peers in the other place. There have been many people who have, including those who've opposed this bill, who have raised serious, considered comments and criticisms of this bill, which we've tried to engage with in good faith. I don't recognise his comments about the cost. This is a priceless national security asset. And of course, when it compares to what, for example, other countries such as France are paying for their base in Djibouti, this is an absolutely crucial deal for the United Kingdom, for the United States and our allies. And we will never compromise when it comes to national security and protecting this country from terrorism and indeed from hostile states. So that is absolutely crucial. That is why we are doing this deal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I firstly express my respect for the Minister in consistently defending the indefensible? Absolute masterclass. Is it not the case that the President of the United States now has our Prime Minister completely over a barrel after his incautious and unhelpful remarks over Greenland? And would it not have been better, along the lines of the art of the deal, to have dealt with this before the government signed the surrender treaty and not after?
Very good.
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course, he makes the link with the discussions around Greenland in recent weeks. But of course, we've been absolutely clear that we would always work with the United States on this. We would always allay any concerns that they have, and we've engaged with them on every single day throughout this process. And of course, the deal was welcomed by Secretary Rubio, by the administration, by Secretary Hegseth, and across the United States system. And very much so because, and I make this point, Mr. Speaker, because we had secured a deal that crucially secures the operations that the United States and ourselves conduct at that base and have additional protections that the previous government didn't get into place.
Andrew Rossen.
I'm not sure. Mr. Speaker, sir, when the historians write about this period of our British history, I think those who have engineered this betrayal of British sovereignty over the King's Islands, along with the complete betrayal of the loyal British Lagosian people, they won't come out of it too well. So I say to the Minister, will he, even at this late stage, review this shameful policy and give the Chagosian people, who he didn't even mention in his reply to the Shadow Foreign Secretary, he didn't even mention any possibility of giving them the same right of self-determination that we afford to all of our other British overseas territories? Why are the Chagosians treated differently to everybody else?
Why?
Well, with the greatest respect, Mr. Speaker, as he well knows, I've regularly referenced Chagosian communities. I've engaged with them, met them on many occasions, even before I was a minister in opposition to, and I have deep respect for them, including those members of the communities who disagree with me. And I simply cannot take anything seriously from the honourable member when he has joined a party who had such links to Russian money coming into their leader in Wales.
Mr. Tice, Lincoln Job.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last time I checked, there were 404 Labour MPs. Why does the Minister think that his whips couldn't come up with a single backbencher to come here into the chamber to support his position today?
Because I think they see this for what it is, which is simply party political game playing, playing games with our national security in the other place in a way that I think is deeply reckless and irresponsible.
I will.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the Minister didn't answer the question the Shadow Foreign Secretary asked, but it's inconceivable that Foreign Office ministers won't have had discussions with their American counterparts about this over the last week. So can the Minister tell us, is it still the government's position that US opposition to this treaty is purely about Greenland?
Mr. Speaker, as I've said many, many times, we continue to engage with the United States every single day, as we have throughout this process, and that will continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's a surprise to see the Minister so ratty here and full of bluster. So I'm going to ask him a technical question, which I'd appreciate his answer to, because we've talked about the 1966 UK-US exchange of notes. The question is whether or not the government can go ahead and give away the Chagos deal without the US. What is the standing of the government at this point? Does it have to have US blessing, or can it do it without the US blessing and no change or negotiation on that 1966 contract?
Again, I just sort of slightly baffled by the question because I did answer this right at the beginning when the Shadow Foreign Secretary asked me. Well, I'll read it out again, Mr. Speaker. I said, we have been clear consistently that before the UK can ratify the treaty, we would need to do the following: pass primary and secondary legislation, update the UK-US agreement, the exchange of notes, and put in place arrangements on the environment, maritime security and migration. And indeed, that was very much the tenor of the answer that was given to Lord Callanan in the other place.
On the message,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week we obviously had a discussion around the cost of this deal, and I asked the Minister whether he would confirm the 34.7 billion figure from the Government Actuaries Department. He didn't give me a direct answer, but later on in the debate he did confirm that it was a nominal amount, not adjusted for inflation or the social time preference rate. So with that in mind, could the Minister give the House the most accurate assessment he can of what the true figure is, adjusted for inflation and the social time preference rate, of the total cost of this deal?
He asked an important question. The government was clear about the forecast costs when it signed the deal, and that was that the average costs per year were 101 million and the net present value was 3.4 billion. As I made clear the other day, forecast costs are of course forecasts. We expect any number to change over time, in particular to reflect things like the OBR forecast inflation rate, which was updated in November 2025. I mentioned that the Treasury was updating the methodology around the social time preference rate. We're not going to keep recalculating every single day, but we were very clear at the time when the treaty was published. We gave a lot of information. We've answered on this many occasions, and of course we'll continue to keep the House updated in due course in the usual way.
Dave Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The former Foreign Secretary has said very explicitly last year that if the United States doesn't like this deal, it won't go ahead. The US don't like this deal. They've been very explicit. So will the Minister be able to tell us, was the now Deputy Prime Minister telling the truth when he made those comments?
Mr. Speaker, we've been very clear. The agreement we've struck is vital for protecting our national security, guaranteeing the long-term future of this vital base for the United Kingdom and the United States, which have been under threat. I've referenced the many comments from across the United States administration. We continue to engage with the United States every day, making clear the very important parts of this deal that protect their security and ours, and we will continue to have such conversations.
Jim Allister.
Speaker, I hold in my hand the explanatory notes that accompanied this bill. There's an extensive section on historical background and on legal background. Nowhere within those sections is there any reference to the 1966 treaty. Why is that? And two specific questions. Does the Minister accept that the 1966 treaty, or notes as he calls them, is extant? And secondly, is it capable of being altered unilaterally?
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course it's extant. It's an arrangement between ourselves and the United States. It's been updated on a number of occasions. I listed those. And as I've been very clear, we have been clear that before the UK can ratify the treaty, we will need to do the following: pass primary and secondary legislation, update the UK-US agreement, and put in place arrangements on the environment, maritime security and migration. I mean, I'm really staggered that perhaps some on the other side have only just clocked this, but we've been aware of this. We engage with the United States every single day, and that was made clear even before Christmas to the noble Lord Callanan in the answer to the question that he asked to my noble friend Baroness Chapman. So, again, this deal secures this base, it secures it for the operations of ourselves in the United States, and we'll continue to engage with the United States on a daily basis on it.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for his answers? The Minister and I share the issue of human rights, and I want to ask a question in relation to that. As a chairperson for the for APPG, I'm very aware of the human rights concerns that exist, including repression of personal expression, reports of concerns for rights of children and minorities. These lead me to ask Government again to reconsider this strategy, not simply in terms of our own national security being at risk, the partnership with our closest allies being strained, to cozy in citizens expressing their opposition, but also the fact that we are handing these people over to rule under a cloud. So will the Minister confirm that the human rights concerns of the Mauritian Government have been fully considered and that Government are content to continue despite these worrying reports? Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I thank honourable friend for his question. As always, I have deep respect for the issues he raises in this place, particularly when it comes to human rights and liberties of individuals. We've engaged extensively with the Chagosian communities. We've heard a range of views. There are a number of the groups that are very strongly in favour of this deal. There are some that are opposed. I respect that. There will always be disagreements on this issue, but we have worked very, very closely to ensure that their needs are at the heart of this deal, and whether that's through the trust fund, whether it's through the clarificatory statements that we've been able to secure from the Mauritian government, the way that the trust fund is going to operate, support Chagosian communities here, and he can absolutely be assured that I remain very seized to these issues, as do other ministers, and they'll continue to form a part of our engagement as this goes forward.
Right, that completes the question. Let the front benches change over. Before we start, I think it would be remiss of me not to say to the Home Secretary that we've got a statement, but I've watched it all unfold yesterday. I've watched it over the last few days, whether it's the FBI, merging of police forces. It really needs to be brought here before it's taken to the media. So can I once again say to the Home Secretary, I know who's very diligent in the job, they're not my rules, they're the Prime Minister's rules. And I don't need the Prime Minister ignoring his own rules. Home Secretary, statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I will make a statement on police reform. A little less than 200 years ago, speaking at this very dispatch box, Sir Robert Peel declared, and I quote, that the time is come when we may fairly pronounce that the country has outgrown her police institutions. Those words could just as well have been spoken today. Policing is not broken, as some might have us believe. Last year, the police made over 750,000 arrests, 5% more than the year before. Some of the most serious crimes are now falling, with knife crime down and murder in the capital at its lowest recorded level. However, across the country, things feel very different. Communities are facing an epidemic of everyday crime that all too often seems to go unpunished. And criminals know it. Shop theft has risen by 72% since 2010. Phone theft is up 58%. At the same time, in a rapidly changing world, the nature of crime is changing. Criminals are operating online and across borders with greater sophistication than ever before, be they drug smugglers, people traffickers, or child sexual abusers. The world has changed dramatically since policing was last fundamentally reformed over 60 years ago. Policing remains the last great unreformed public service. Today, as this government publishes a new policing white paper, I set out reforms that are long overdue. They define a new model for policing in this country, with local policing that protects our communities and national policing that protects us all. Since taking office, we have already restored a focus on neighbourhood policing that the last Conservative government eroded. They pulled bobbies off the beat, with over half of the public now reporting they never see police on patrol in their local area. It was a foolish error, because neighbourhood policing works. Across the world, the evidence shows that visible patrols in high crime areas work. The last Labour government put more officers on the streets, and confidence in policing hit record levels. The Tories cut them, and confidence fell. This government is righting that wrong with a target of 13,000 more neighbourhood officers by the end of the Parliament, and we have already put 2,400 back onto the beat. We have also introduced the neighbourhood guarantee, so every community has a named contactable officer, and I intend to end the distortive officer maintenance grant. This was introduced by the last Conservative government, who had to replace the 20,000 police officers lost on their watch. The results were perverse. Uniformed officers hired, but stuck behind desks, with 12,000 men and women in uniform now working in support roles, including, absurdly, some 250 warranted officers working in HR. I intend to end this by introducing a neighbourhood policing ring fence, which will ensure that forces are putting uniformed officers where the public want and need them, out in the community, fighting crime on our streets. However, we must do more. Today, we have policing happening in the wrong places. We have local forces responsible for national policing, distracting them from policing their communities. And at the same time, we have forces of various shapes and sizes, with quality varying widely, force by force. This government's reforms will ensure we have the right policing happening in the right place. That starts with the creation of a new national police service. At first, this force will set standards and lift administrative tasks off local forces. But in time, it will draw in all national crime-fighting responsibilities, including counter-terrorism policing, serious organised crime and fraud. This will ensure local forces are no longer distracted by national responsibilities, while at the same time creating an elite national force expert at fighting the ever more sophisticated criminals who are operating nationwide across our borders and online. Alongside this new national force, we will replace the patchwork of 43 local forces that has remained almost unchanged since the 1964 Police Act. That model has been straining for decades. Today, it is simply not fit for purpose. Our 43 forces are of varying sizes. Some of them have just 1,000 officers, others over 8,000. And the Metropolitan Police is 30 times larger than our smallest forces. As a result, some forces are not equipped to handle complex investigations or respond to major incidents. Meanwhile, the duplication across force headquarters means money is wasted, drawing resource away from frontline policing. So we will introduce a smaller number of regional forces responsible for specialist investigations like murder, serious sexual offences and public order. And within these forces, we will introduce smaller local policing areas. These will be focused exclusively on local policing, tackling the burglaries, shoplifting and antisocial behaviour that too often go unpunished today. It is vital we set these new forces up in the right way. So I will soon launch a review to determine the precise nature of these new forces and the precise number. Its work will be completed this summer. Taken together, these reforms will put the right policing in the right place. An elite national force will tackle nationwide crime, regional forces will conduct specialist investigations, and local policing will tackle the epidemic of everyday crime. Our structures are outdated, and so is our adoption of the tools and technology that could make our policing both more effective and efficient. Criminals are operating in increasingly sophisticated ways. But in policing, in all honesty, our response is mixed. While some forces surge ahead with the results to show for it, others are fighting crime in a digital age with analogue methods. We will ensure that every force is adopting the latest technology led out of the new National Police Service. And this will include the largest ever rollout of live facial recognition technologies across England and Wales. We know this approach works. In London, in just 2 years, the Metropolitan Police have made 1,700 arrests, taking robbers, domestic abusers and rapists off our streets. When the future arrives, there are always doubters. 100 years ago, fingerprinting was decried as curtailing our civil liberties, but today we could not imagine policing without it. I have no doubt the same will prove true of facial recognition technology in the years to come. At the same time, we will launch Police.ai, investing a record £115 million in AI and automation to make policing more effective and efficient, stripping admin away to ensure officer time can be devoted to the human factor that only a police officer can provide. Common standards apply both to the technology we use and the quality and performance of our officers. We must and we will set and maintain the highest standards. We have already introduced new vetting requirements, enabling forces to dismiss those who fail vetting checks. Alongside a range of measures to lift policing standards, we will introduce a licence to practice for police officers, recognising the professionalism, dedication and duty that comes with the uniform. We must be willing to set clear standards and the performance that we expect within forces and hold policing leaders to account for their delivery. Under the last Conservative government, there was a retreat from the historic role held by Home Secretaries and the Home Office since the days of Peel. That was an error, and this government will reverse it. As the old Peelian maxim has it, the police are the public and the public are the police. And I consider it essential that the people, through Parliament, can determine what they expect from their forces. So this government will restore targets for police forces and set minimum standards that forces must abide by. Forces' performance will be transparent and public, and where performance falls, we will take action. We will create new turnaround teams to go into a force where performance has fallen. And in the most extreme examples of a failure of leadership, I will restore the Home Secretary's power to fire a Chief Constable. This was a vital power relinquished by the last Conservative government, who handed that power to police and crime commissioners, a position that I consider a failed experiment, despite the best efforts of many excellent PCCs across the country. And we will now draw that experiment to an end. Local accountability and governance will remain essential, and it will continue to be provided by mayoralties or local crime and policing boards. Mr. Speaker, taken together, these are without question major reforms. A transformation in the structures of our forces, the standards within them, and the means by which they are held to account by the public. These are the most significant changes to how policing works in this country in around 200 years. The world has changed immeasurably since then, but policing has not. We have excellent and brave police officers across the country. We have effective and inspiring leaders across many of our forces, but they are operating within a structure that is outdated, making the job of policing our streets and protecting our country harder than it should be. I began by quoting Peel's declaration that the country has outgrown her police institutions. He went on to argue that the safest course will be found to be in the introduction of a new mode of protection. Now, as then, it is time we had the bravery to pursue a new mode of protection and a new model of policing, with the right policing in the right place. That means local forces protecting their communities and national policing that protects us all. And that, Mr. Speaker, is what this government will deliver, and I commend the statement to the House.
Can I first of all say you did run slightly over by over a minute, so a little bit of leeway to the front benches. Shadow Home Secretary Criswell.
Well, I thank the Home Secretary for advance sight of her statement, especially after her busy weekend chairing the NEC, which excluded Andy Burnham from returning to Parliament. Anyway, the Home Secretary's statement. Seems to be some concern coming from benches behind her on that. Anyway, the Home Secretary's statement is striking for what it did not say, because there was no mention, not one word, of her plans for total police officer numbers. And the reason for that is simple. Total police officer numbers are falling under this Labour government, as figures due for release later this week will confirm. Now, the last recruitment intake before the election was in March 2024, and there were 149,769 officers in post. That is the highest number in this country's history. By the same time the following year, under Labour, officer numbers had fallen by over 1,000. And in the current financial year, numbers are falling even further, with the Met alone saying they will lose a staggering 1,500 officers this financial year. So on officer numbers, the government is engaged in a contrick. They are transferring officers away from crime investigation, away from 999 response, and away from other teams into neighbourhood teams. So they can say neighbourhood numbers are going modestly up, but total police officer numbers are falling. So there'll be fewer 999 response officers, fewer investigation officers, response times will be slower, and investigations will not be as effective. The Home Secretary can set targets and make announcements, but the fact is she is presiding over falling total police numbers, and the public will be less safe as a result. Now, the Home Secretary has said she will change the structure of policing. Briefings over the weekend say this reorganisation will be complete in, and I had to double-check this, 2034, nearly a decade away. But we have a crime crisis today. Shoplifting and phone theft are both surging upwards under this government, and shoplifting is now at the highest level ever. Knife crime in London up by 80% under Mayor Sadiq Khan, and women are being let down too, with sex crimes up by 9%, rape up by 6%, stalking up by 5%, and harassment up by 6% under this Labour government. This requires action today, not in 2034. Now, her plan includes mandating the merger of police forces, and briefings over the weekend suggest a reduction from 43 down to 10 or 12. So a single police force might cover an area from Dover to Milton Keynes or from Penzance to Swindon. Such huge forces will be remote from the communities they serve. Resources will be drawn away from villages and towns towards large cities. And the biggest force in the country is the Met. And yet they have the worst crime clear-up rate of any force in the country. They fail to solve 95% of reported crimes, going to show that large scale does not automatically deliver better results. And therefore, we will oppose the mandated merger of county forces into remote regional megaforces. And police forces are warning that Labour's early prisoner release scheme means more crime and more demands on policing. Most criminals will now be released after serving just 1/3 of their prison sentence, and even rapists will only serve half. To make things even worse, Labour plans to abolish prison sentences of under a year, so even the most prolific shoplifters will never face jail. This is a recipe for disaster cooked up by the Home Secretary in her previous role. Now, there are some things we can agree on, because the Home Secretary has copied some things from us. I am glad that she is continuing the rollout of AI and live facial recognition that started under the last government, and we fully support that. It is right the Home Secretary will have greater powers to intervene. We announced that policy at our conference last year, and of course we support it. And she now says she will abolish non-crime hate incidents. Now, we need to see the details, but perhaps the Home Secretary could explain why Labour voted against that measure when we tabled it as an amendment just last year. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, the simple fact is this: total police officer numbers are falling under this Home Secretary's watch. 999 response times and crime investigations will suffer. Shoplifting, phone snatching and sex offences are all rising under this government. And regional megaforces will make things worse, not better. Her grand plans will not even be fully implemented until 2034, yet action is needed today. These announcements will not make our streets safer this year or next year, and the public will rapidly see that.
Secretary. Me, Madam Deputy Speaker, I will take no lectures from the Conservative Party on policing. They had 14 years in government and delivered no meaningful change beyond decimating neighbourhood policing, introducing the failed experiment of police and crime commissioners, and sweeping away meaningful targets to hold our police forces to account. He complains about non-crime hate incidents. Pray do tell who was in government when they were brought in. He talks about Home Secretary powers. Which was the government that got rid of Home Secretary powers? It was the Conservatives. It was the Conservative Party, Madam Deputy Speaker, and not once in all the time that they have been in opposition since the last general election have they had the gumption to come to this dispatch box and apologise for their appalling track record on policing. It was the Conservative Conservative Party, whose policies saw the slashing of police numbers by 20,000, a measure that they very hastily then tried to replace by bringing back another 20,000, but in a distorted way, which meant that 12,000 of those officers, warranted police officers, are doing desk jobs. If the Shadow Home Secretary, I do ask him, read the detail of the White Paper and really reconsider whether he wants to stand against everything in that White Paper, because he cannot possibly believe that it is a good idea for warranted police officers to be doing desk jobs. He cannot possibly think it's fine for 250 of those warranted police officers to be in HR and 200 of them to be in admin support. I cannot believe that even he, with all of his lack of attention to detail, thinks that that is a good idea. And I do urge him and those that sit behind him to perhaps reconsider whether they are going to stand against the policies unveiled in this White Paper. One thing, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I really must urge he looks at again carefully is on regional police forces. He knows full well, because I know he'll have looked at the White Paper, that those regional forces will have within them local police areas who can then concentrate on policing their local communities right down to the neighbourhood level. The only reason I'm bringing in this new model of policing is to protect neighbourhood policing, something that was decimated on the Conservative Party's watch. If he wants to stand against local police areas focusing on local communities, regional forces dedicated to specialist investigation to make sure that rape cases, that murder cases have exactly the same high standard of service no matter which part of the country you happen to be in, then, more fool him, Madam Deputy Speaker, because these measures will result in a better policing model for everyone across our country. And he raises the example of the Met. And let me tell him, one of the things that Louise Casey found in her 2023 report was that the Met having the national responsibility for counter-terror policing, where they do counter-terror for everyone across the UK, distracts from the policing of London. These reforms will mean that counter-terror policing and all other national requirements for policing will sit with the National Police Service, so that the Met and every other force in this country can focus on policing their local areas. I cannot believe he wants to stand against reforms that deliver better local policing, but Madam Deputy Speaker, that appears to be where the Conservatives are at.
Jane Beckhillier. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome the announcement by the Home Secretary today. In London, we've long known that neighbourhood policing is vital, and only yesterday I was in Dalston, where there's been a lot of antisocial behaviour, and they've noticed the extra police on the streets. There's been, though, an issue about abstraction in London, where those officers often have to backfill blue light officers or even or police national demonstrations. How is she going to plan in this process to make sure that that doesn't happen, that those teams are dedicated to neighbourhoods?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. She's absolutely right that too many of our police forces are distracted from being able to police their local communities because they're dealing with national level issues, including potentially national issues relating to public order. All of those functions will ultimately sit within the new National Police Service, but in the interim I will appoint a special command to deal with public order policing in particular, so that we can make sure that we have a consistency of approach across the country.
Spokesperson Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, after a busy weekend policing Labour leadership rows, the Home Secretary is in the House today to announce reforms to policing. I think we all agree, we hope that she's more successful with the latter than she was with the former. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government came to power with a pledge to increase police numbers, but instead of the 13,000 more neighbourhood police, the latest stats tell us that we have 4,000 fewer frontline police. Numbers are down, and so is public trust. Police are stretched and too many crimes are going unchecked. After years of Conservative chaos, people are crying out for a visible police presence in their communities. That is why we welcome the Home Secretary's commitment today to focus on restoring proper community policing. We hope that is more than simple words. As well as getting more police on our streets, she must also address the horrifying decline in police counters and stations, which began under the Conservatives but sadly continues under Labour in London today. So will the Home Secretary commit to ensuring a police counter in every community that needs one? Policing, Madam Deputy Speaker, must be fit for the modern era. It must be able to tackle organised crime that too often presents itself in our communities through mobile phone theft, through drug dealing, car crime and bike theft. So can the Home Secretary reassure us that the new national force will be properly resourced and integrated with local forces so counter-terrorism and intelligence work are not undermined. And as local forces are abolished and merged, we must not see vital links lost to local communities. For example, Gloucestershire Police is one of the smallest forces with urban and rural policing teams. If its leadership is placed under the control of a Bristol-based force, how will people in Cheltenham, Tewkesbury and the Cotswolds be reassured of that local focus? We also ask whether placing the power to hire and fire chief constables in the hands of the Home Secretary is the right approach. Does this not further politicise policing, particularly with the prospect of the Honourable Member for Fareham and Waterlooville as a future Home Secretary in a Farage-led coalition of chaos between the Tories and Reform? Rural communities have long been neglected, Madam Deputy Speaker, so will the Home Secretary commit to placing dedicated rural crime teams in every force? And finally, the Home Secretary mentioned facial recognition. Will she ensure that there are proper safeguards put in place to ensure the technology is not biased and those in ethnic minorities can be reassured that they're not going to be wrongfully criminalised?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Liberal Democrat spokesperson for his response and for his, I believe, support for at least some of the reforms, particularly those based around neighbourhood policing. He's absolutely right. Neighbourhood policing is absolutely critical and will be the bedrock of the new policing model unveiled in the White Paper. We've already made progress on increasing the number of neighbourhood police officers, which is 2,400 already. It will be 3,000 by the end of March, with at least 1,750 over the next financial year. So we will continue to make progress on neighbourhood police officers. He also raises the point around police numbers, and what I would say to him, and what is clear from both the White Paper and my statement today, what matters is what those officers are doing. I hope he and his colleagues on that part of the House will agree that nobody wants to see warranted police officers sat behind desks working HR and admin support. We want police officers out in our communities, policing our communities, going after criminals and providing the reassurance that only visible policing can provide. He will know that decisions on police counters and other measures are for individual forces, but I hope he will recognise that we have delivered on our commitment to have a named, contactable officer in every neighbourhood, which I believe goes some way to reassuring local communities. On the National Police Service, he makes a very good point on counter-terror policing and the National Crime Agency. Let me assure him and the whole House that those two organisations will only move into the National Police Service when it is fully ready, and we will not compromise on the operational capabilities of either of those two organisations. And I will work very closely with the leadership of both to make sure that the switch into the National Police Service only happens in a way that does not compromise the operational effectiveness of either counter-terror policing or the National Crime Agency. These reforms are fully funded to the end of the Parliament, I can assure him on that. He also makes his point on regional forces, and again I would urge him to look and absorb the detail of the White Paper, and I look forward to discussing these issues with him in more detail. Within the regional force structures, there will be local policing areas right down to the neighbourhood level, which will ensure that whether you live in a rural area or in an urban area like me, you get the local policing that you need and that you deserve. And that is the absolute foundation of all of these reforms, so that regional forces can concentrate on the things that can be done at scale, like specialist investigations and public order policing, but local police areas can police right down to the neighbourhood level and deal with those everyday crimes, exactly as he said, that are blighting communities all over the country, and that will apply just as equally and as forcefully for rural communities as it will for those in towns and cities across the country. And let me also reassure him on live facial recognition. I believe this is incredibly important technology, but we will make sure that its rollout is in line with the sort of regulations that we would expect to make sure it doesn't have a distortive effect. We're consulting on that right now, and in the future the National Police Service will ensure that the adoption of technology across policing takes place quickly and in line with the standards that we would all expect.
Bell Ribeiro Abbey. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the portion of the Home Secretary's announcement on the deployment of 13,000 more neighbourhood officers, which will be incredibly welcome in my constituency where we have a serious antisocial behaviour problem. However, residents in my borough, Lambeth, overall have a historical issue with levels of trust in the police, and this is largely due to racial profiling Can the Home Secretary reassure me and my constituents that reforms to policing, including any measures that see police granted more powers, will seek to address the issues of police mistrust and racial bias in policing?
Thank my honourable friend for her question. Yes, let me just reassure her that the rollout of all policing powers, including the use of technology, will make sure is in line with the Race Action Plan, which we are supporting, and that any measures are stress tested to make sure that they serve all communities equally. And it is our position that the police must always police without fear or favour, so that every community can be confident that they are getting the right quality of policing and that nobody is being unfairly targeted.
Sir Roger Gale.
Madam Deputy Speaker. Kent is one of the largest counties in the country. It faces very significant geographic challenges with the Channel Tunnel, the largest port of entry into the United Kingdom, Dover, a Manston airport that is likely to reopen, and of course the small matter of illegal migration across the Channel. I cannot see, Madam Deputy Speaker, how a policing area that I understand will stretch from Banbury in Oxfordshire to Herne Bay on the North Sea coast and Sandwich on the Channel coast will be policed effectively and locally as it currently is. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am, I think, certainly one of the only members of this House who's held a warrant as a serving police officer. I understand very well indeed the needs. I did say one. I understand the needs only too well for policing to keep pace with the same tools that are used by the criminals. But could the Home Secretary tell the House whether or not this plan has the confidence of the constabulary?
Well, let me thank the honourable member for his contribution and also for his service and that of others who have served in our police service. Let me reassure him the plan for regional forces will include, and this will be very clear when I introduce legislation later in the year, an absolute focus on local police areas, so that local policing for local communities is very much tailored to many of the needs that he has pointed out. But at regional level, you have the economies of scale and the capacity to deal with the specialist investigations that we know are necessary, and to make sure that the quality of those investigations doesn't depend on which part of the country you happen to be in. So I hope that when the detail is out, he is able to support the proposals, given that they will focus very carefully on local policing areas, specifically to deal with some of those issues that he has raised. The exact number of regional forces and the sort of geography that they will span will be a matter for the reviewer, and I hope to announce who that will be very soon, with a review to report in the summer, so that we can crack on with rolling out these reforms. And let me say to him, I've been delighted, a little surprised by the sheer number of policing leaders who have come out in support of these proposals, including those who represent organisations that will see change as a result of these reforms. I think the sheer range of people who have supported the White Paper shows that these reforms are the right reforms for policing in our country.
Joe White. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I very much welcome these proposals? Currently, the NCA is hugely under-resourced, and hopefully bringing these elements together will give it the funding required to do its job properly. The amount of duplication of effort that occurs and lack of information sharing means huge inefficiencies. They are struggling with the pace of change in technology, especially because of E2E encryption. They struggle to hire and retain the staff with the technical skills they require, and that those that do have them, they're eagerly snapped up by the private sector. They do not have the funding to make the technical investment needed to keep up with the pace of change. Because of the structure and separated command and control of the regional organised crime units, the NCA and the Met, they make decisions and prioritise independently and without deconfliction, for example, in the procurement of tools and data. This means that the same technologies can be acquired multiple times, brought to only to benefit a single area. Does the Minister agree with me that this White Paper will tackle these challenges head on?
Thank my honourable friend. She's right. The National Police Service will draw in the national responsibilities of both counter-terror policing and the National Crime Agency. I think one of the main benefits of the reform will be that at the moment, whilst these two organisations do collaborate together very effectively, and I do pay tribute to their current leadership and the way that they operate alongside one another, but they do duplicate and build similar capabilities, and instead of having those capabilities built alongside and within two organisations, it does obviously make sense to bring them into one organisation and to prevent that duplication of capabilities and functions, but also for the sorts of people that they are going after, whether that's serious organised criminals or terrorists. We know that actually we are one of the few major countries in the world that doesn't combine both counter-terror policing and serious organised crime, because actually international criminals often cross boundaries and indulge in all sorts of different types of work, including covering the territory of both terror financing and serious organised crime as well. So I think that the reforms will lead to a very effective service and build on the excellent work that is already done by officers in counter-terror policing and the NCA as well.
Gregory Stafford.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary quoted Sir Robert Peel at the top of her speech, and I quote saying that he was speaking at this very dispatch box. Clearly, the Home Secretary hadn't realised those dispatch boxes were donated by New Zealand after the Second World War, and if she was talking more figuratively, this whole chamber was destroyed in 1834 after Peel gave those words. But accuracy, the accuracy that she sacrificed for rhetoric continues throughout her speech. So can I ask her, following discussions I've had with the Chief Constables of both Surrey and Hampshire who are against these proposals, if Chief Constables across the country, like those in Surrey and Hampshire, are against her proposals when her review concludes, will she scrap this proposal, or is this just a review in name only?
Home Secretary.
Well, I mean, I bow down to his greater knowledge of House of Commons trivia. I'm sure he's an excellent member of every pub quiz team he's ever been a part of. The review is going to look at how we deliver regional forces. So it will mean that there is a significant reduction in the number of forces, but the review will advise on the correct number of regional forces and how we should go about implementing that policy.
Gerald Jones.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary's proposals will allow for a new focus on community policing and engagement, which we know was proven to work under the last Labour government. The biggest issue by far I come across is the lack of feedback to victims of crime. So with the proposals that she's announced and with technology improving all the time, will she commit to having a look at that to see if that can improve for residents and constituents and improve trust and accountability with policing?
Home Secretary.
He's absolutely right. I think we could make a lot of progress if we could ensure that the Code of Conduct for Victims, the Victims Code, was actually implemented consistently by everyone all across the country. And I know that the Justice Secretary also wishes to make sure that there is greater adherence to all of the requirements of the Victims Code. But he's absolutely right. In the end, policing is a public service. It's there for members of the public and also for victims of crime to give them confidence that their case is going to be dealt with fairly and as quickly as possible, and that criminals are brought to justice, and that is exactly why we are making these reforms.
Wendy Chamberlain.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as a former police officer, I've watched the rollout of Police Scotland with some sadness, because despite best efforts, it has not delivered what the Home Secretary hopes to achieve with her amalgamations in Scotland. Communities feel that neighbourhood policing is further away from them and that they don't have the visibility and local accountability that they hope for. But the other point I wanted to ask, as well as hoping that she's taking some lessons from Scotland, is in relation to the point she's been making about the number of police officers who are working in desk jobs. Surely she will recognise that a number of those individuals are working in these areas because they're on light or restricted duties, and we've always got to have roles available for those people to do that. But that's also because we have focused too much on police officer numbers and not actually on the back office functions and the expertise of police staff. Will this white paper be addressing the overall resourcing model for policing?
Home Secretary.
Well, thank the Honourable Lady for her contribution. Let me say on Police Scotland, I think one of the real issues with the Police Scotland reforms was that they completed them within 1 year. And I have made a deliberate decision to phase out these years, phase out these proposals and these measures over a number of years, so towards the end of this Parliament and into the next. I make no apology for that timeline, for that proposed timeline, because I believe that we must go carefully. These are big changes, and it is important that they are rolled out effectively and in a way that maintains the confidence of the public as well as all of those who work within our police service. So I think that we have already learnt the lessons of what has happened in Scotland. And of course, the other big difference between the measures that I've introduced today and what happened with Police Scotland is that we haven't focused from the outset on neighbourhood policing. They're the absolute bedrock of all of these proposals that I have made, and that is not quite the same as what happened over in Scotland, although one of the things I would say about Police Scotland is it is certainly the case that those specialist capabilities and specialist investigations have improved. What I would say to her on desk jobs, look, the most important thing is that we have police officers, who are warranted police officers, who are policing our streets. Of course, there is often a need for some not to be out. There is a need for support staff as well, and we have to have the right balance between those who are out in frontline policing and those who are doing back office roles within our police service, and we will have a workforce strategy as part of this white paper. But that is why I think that we have to always have in mind that we're talking about a police service that delivers for the public. And so what we really care about is outcomes, what those officers are doing, how they're policing our streets, and providing that much needed reassurance to all of our communities.
Alex Serval.
Thank you, Mandate Speaker. I'm really pleased the Home Secretary is retaining the role of Democrats elected Metro mayors in the oversight of police force. My specific questions around police AI. We know that AI training models have bias, in particularly around race. How are we going to ensure that these AI models won't have this race bias in them? Also, all the major AI companies are all foreign companies, foreign owned. How are we to ensure that our national security is protected and that this data is not undertaken and used by foreign governments against the United Kingdom?
Well, let me reassure him that at the moment we have strong measures in place for how data is used within our police service, and of course in the future all of this capability will sit within the National Police Service, which will set the standards, and there will be very high standards with a high degree of transparency, so that we can make sure that we're always stress testing our use of AI and technology so that it is used effectively for policing, but doesn't do so in a way that contravenes our collective values.
Sir David Davis.
To follow on from this immediate preceding question that her honourable friend put to her, she strongly supported digital facial ID and artificial intelligence. As her colleague says, both of these technologies show significant error rates, particularly when it comes to racial minorities. Innocent people fear this, particularly after the post office scandal, which showed that courts believe computers rather than people. And so you have miscarriages of justice out of that. So 3 questions for her. Firstly, what does she see as an acceptable error rate for these technologies? Secondly, does she support compensation for people who are misidentified by this sort of technology? And thirdly, will she put it all, she talked about regulations, will she put it all on a statutory basis based on primary legislation that passes through this House?
Before I call the Home Secretary and members, can I just remind people there's a lot of people on their feet, and I want to finish this statement around 5:30. So if you could answer one question, Home Secretary.
Okay, I think that's me being told to go faster. So let me assure the honourable gentleman that we are consulting at the moment on the safeguards for the use of AI and technology and live facial recognition. Let me assure him I will always make sure that there are robust safeguards in place, and I am sure that we will be debating these issues in the House many times over the months to come.
Lewis Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the Home Secretary's statement today? My constituents expect everyday policing response to improve, but they also know the value of more specialist public order capabilities, because in August 24, the brave officers of Northumbria Police put on their public order gear to protect our citizens against disgraceful violent conduct in our city centre. I wonder if the Home Secretary could just say a little bit more about how she envisages public order responsibilities sitting between the national body that she outlines, regional forces, and if she could say a little bit about the funding streams for that.
Well, my honourable friend raises an important point, and learning the lessons of what happened in 2024, that is why we've already decided to bring in a national command role specifically for public order policing. The other issues that he raises, particularly on funding, all of these reforms are fully funded to the end of the Parliament, but of course the specific funding streams are a matter for future funding settlements. He'll know that we are publishing the funding settlement for the coming financial year on Wednesday.
Sir Julian Lewis.
congratulate the Home Secretary on having attracted dozens of her own backbenchers to support her when the Foreign Affairs Minister just before her couldn't find a single one to support him on the dreadful Chagos deal. But can she tell us a bit more about the way in which the new structure will be governed? I understand the idea about the National Police Commissioner at the very top, but what sort of executive key people will there be lower down to ensure that relevance is maintained in, for example, rural areas as opposed to the different needs of urban areas?
Home Secretary.
Thank the Honourable Gentleman. Well, the White Paper envisages a whole change to the accountability mechanisms for policing at every level, whether that's for the National Police Service or right down to regional forces and local police areas. He will know that I'm bringing back Home Secretary powers. We've also published a performance framework today, which will bring transparency to how police forces are functioning. There will be a new National Commissioner in charge of the National Police Service, and all of the other structures will sit underneath that. But I can assure him that at every level there will be a very high expectation of both high performance but also accountability both to local crime and policing boards and to the Home Secretary direct.
Matt Bishop.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a former police officer of 3 police forces in this country, I can categorically and honestly say that the many reforms presented in the White Paper are welcomed by my former colleagues and myself. I just want to gently touch that both parties opposite have a chance before to bring these reforms forward and actually tried many times and failed on many times to bring them forward. So I just wondered what sets us different from the previous governments, and put on record my full confidence in the current Home Secretary to get this done once and for all.
Well, let me say to my honourable friend, I very much appreciate his support for these proposals and for our ability as a government to get them done, and also that of the other officers, the rank and file, who I know he is still in touch with. It is very much appreciated. Look, these are major reforms and they will take time to deliver. I have been encouraged by the support received from policing leaders and rank and file police officers all over the country, including from those whose organisations are going to change and now sit within the National Police Service. And I just say to everybody across this House, if you care about neighbourhood policing, if you care about local policing for local communities, these are the reforms for you and you should support them.
Pete Wishart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Over the weekend, the Home Secretary was trailing this as a British FBI, and where indeed it might be their FBI, British it most definitely is not, as it only applies to England and Wales. In Scotland, we're immensely proud of our culture and ethos of policing by consent, and the fact that we have the lowest crime rates in the whole of the UK. The last thing that we want is this creeping Americanisation. So can she say today, clearly and concisely, that this will not apply to Scotland and no attempt will be made to foist it on us?
I do regret the Honourable Gentleman's inability to move beyond party politics. He will know, and the Policing Minister has engaged with the Scottish Government, even today, in fact, that the National Police Service will be UK-wide, but its powers and remit will vary between England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. In England and Wales, it will have full operational powers and be able to carry out its law enforcement activities, but in Scotland and Northern Ireland, it will only carry out operations with the agreement of the legally designated authority, which is the position as it is today.
Rachel Hopkins.
Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Home Secretary for a statement on police reform today. As she consults on the new police force structures, can she confirm that local accountability, community engagement and place-based policing will remain central to the government's approach?
Secretary.
I 100% can, yes.
Sir Alex Shelbrooke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy, it won't take much of a Hansard search to see that I, many years ago, asked Baroness May, when she was Home Secretary, to do something very similar to this. But the devil will always be in the detail, and as you know, Madam Deputy Speaker, West and South Yorkshire are far more densely populated than North Yorkshire, a big chunk of my constituency now. So may I ask the Home Secretary, who will be involved in the consultation on these smaller policing areas? How much credence will those people be given? Because this very much has to come down to local level, local councils. And what scrutiny will we, as local members of Parliament, be able to give that consultation? Because ultimately, this is what it's all going to hinge on.
Well, I do thank the honourable gentleman, and I know he takes a very keen interest in these affairs, and I'd happily discuss some of the detail of these proposals with him. Let me tell him I will announce a reviewer in due course, and it will be for the reviewer and the panel that they will have to support them to set out how they intend to go about doing that review, including on consultation. But I absolutely take his point that these reforms will work if they have the buy-in and if they make sense based on geography, and they will reflect that, and I will make sure that when I receive the report of the reviewer, that is the same lens with which I will look at these proposals.
Jonathan Hinder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Policing needs a stronger national centre, modern IT systems that actually work and can talk to each other, and much better mental health support for officers who are exposed to so much trauma. And these reforms could deliver that, so I welcome those elements. However, I do start sceptical of the licence to practice and the value it might add, though I approach it with an open mind. And while I believe in different routes into policing, I am very sceptical of direct entry at inspector rank specifically, which is such a crucial operational rank which I have held myself, and this has, after all, been tried unsuccessfully by the last government. So if policing reform is to be a success, then it will be down to the implementation on the front line. That's what really matters to the public. So the voice of the front line must be a key part of this, and it cannot be through the rotten Police Federation, who just today have been found to have unlawfully suspended elected officers for speaking up for them. So, will the Home Secretary guarantee that she will take into account the voices of the front line before making final decisions and meet with me to discuss the proposals?
Well, we will absolutely take into account the views of the rank and file. I'm happy to meet with him. Let me tell him on the Police Federation, the White Paper makes clear that we're not happy with the status quo. The Policing Minister has met with them directly, and they know that if they don't improve quickly enough, that I will not hesitate to bring forward further reforms to make sure that our rank and file police officers are better represented. He made a point on direct entry as well. He will know that Lord Blunkett is currently leading an independent commission on police leadership, and I will look at the proposals that he brings forward as well. But the White Paper does signal our interest in this model of direct entry. But as he notes, the devil is always in the detail, and it is all about how these reforms are implemented. I hope he and others will continue to keep an open mind as we develop these proposals further.
Mira Wilson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. On page 24 of the White Paper, it says to build trust and increase accessibility, officers will also maintain a visible presence in local hubs, schools and community spaces. So could I ask the Home Secretary how this vision marries with the fact that in London, under the Met's Tough Choices programme, we're about to see the closure of the Twickenham Police Station front counter. We've already lost our specialist schools teams, and we've lost our specialist parks police, including in Bushy Park in my constituency. Does this not show that she can make all the reforms to structures as she likes, but if it's not resourced properly, our constituents will not see that community policing she promises?
Well, what her constituents will see is the increase in neighbourhood police officers. We will have 3,000 of those in place by the end of March, and what they will also see is the named contactable officer in every neighbourhood. The neighbourhood policing guarantee is the absolute bedrock for making sure that communities, wherever they are, London or other parts of the country, always have visible policing in their neighbourhoods.
Alex Barris-Curtin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Home Secretary for her statement, and I want to pay tribute to all those who serve to keep us safe. In respect of the impact this will have on Wales, I wonder if she can assure me that as part of these important reforms, she will consult with all local partners, MPs, police forces, local government and Welsh Government in order to determine what local scrutiny governance looks like in Wales as part of these reforms.
Secretary.
Well, I thank him for that. Let me assure him the Policing Minister also met with representatives from the Welsh Government, I believe also today, and we will continue those conversations. The independent review will take into account existing devolution and local governance arrangements, and I will happily make sure that he and others who are interested in this are kept updated as the review rolls out.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituents are already concerned that Avon and Somerset Constabulary is dominated by Bristol, and far too few resources are devoted to Somerset's smaller towns and villages. So how will the Home Secretary ensure that her new, larger regional forces police our rural communities properly?
Home Secretary.
Well, I can assure him, because within the new regional forces there will be local policing areas with neighbourhood policing as the absolute bedrock of those local policing areas. I would not bring these reforms forward if I wasn't absolutely certain that in the setup of the new model for policing we are absolutely protecting local policing so that every area gets the type of policing it needs and deserves.
Julie Means.
Madam Deputy Speaker, last Friday I held a community meeting with Cumbria's Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner David Allen, who, since his election just 20 months ago, has been focused on taking those officers who were forced into the back room under the last government and putting them back on the front line. So can the Home Secretary please reassure me and our Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner that the reform she's outlined today will continue to strengthen frontline policing, particularly in rural areas like Cumbria?
Secretary.
My honourable friend makes an incredibly powerful point. I can provide her with that reassurance, and the Policing Minister spoke to her Police and Crime Commissioner only today.
Martin Vickers. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Humberside force that polices my Brigg in Immingham constituency includes 4 local authorities and 2 separate mayoral authorities. Exactly what proportion of the police funding is likely to come from the police precept, and how will that be divided up?
Home Secretary.
Those will be matters for the independent review to advise on, because not only are they looking at the correct number of regional forces for England and Wales, but also the method of rolling out those police forces as well. And I'm sure we'll be able to discuss those when the review reports in the summer.
Afzal Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a former police officer, I welcome the Home Secretary's statement. Under the current Chief Constable, Greater Manchester Police has seen a resurgence and has become a highly formed police force, serving a growing and economically successful city region. Now, this is in part because of a highly effective working partnership between Greater Manchester local authorities and mayoral combined authority. Can the Home Secretary provide assurance that the current structure, which is clearly working well, will not be altered?
Secretary.
It will be for the review to recommend what the new structure should look like in terms of the regional forces. But let me pay tribute to the work of Greater Manchester Police and the Chief Constable in particular. Greater Manchester is actually a very good example of a large force that is not burdened by significant national services and is therefore able to concentrate on policing their local communities and to do so very effectively. And the Shadow Home Secretary chunters from a sedentary position, but he could do with learning a few lessons from Greater Manchester.
Lisa Smart.
Much, Madam Deputy Speaker. In Greater Manchester, we love a bit of drama. We've got the longest running soap opera in the world with Coronation Street. We have some nail-biting derby matches, and over the weekend there was some pretty high-octane speculation about whether the current person responsible for policing in the city region might be allowed to apply for another job. Where we don't want more drama, though, Madam Deputy Speaker, is in policing our communities. So could the Home Secretary share her thinking about how to preserve what works well in Greater Manchester, where the police force is coterminous with the mayoral authority and the 10 local authorities within it, enabling good, strong partnership working so that my Hazel Grove constituents get the policing they deserve?
Well, let me reassure the Honourable Lady, I am very much no drama Shabana. I've already paid fulsome tribute to Greater Manchester Police. I think there is some excellent work that is taking place in that part of the world, and I'm sure that the reviewer, once appointed, will take into account some of the good examples of local policing within a larger force structure. That I'm sure there are many lessons to learn from Manchester.
Laura Kirksmith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Home Secretary for her action. One local farmer described to me the crime that he's been experiencing, with gates cut open, crops damaged, quad bikes and 4x4s stolen. And then because he lives close to the Bedfordshire border, the criminals will just flee over there, and Thames Valley Police find it very difficult to follow up. So can the Home Secretary say how these reforms will improve police presence and response time in rural areas, and in particular how they'll solve this problem of
police forces not collaborating across borders.
Home Secretary.
Well, the absolute bedrock of these reforms is local policing through the local police areas, which are part of our proposed regional forces, with neighbourhood policing absolutely embedded within that. She'll know that on quad bikes specifically, we have some new legislative changes coming in, which will deal with some of the issues that she has raised. But it is the intention of all of these reforms to ensure that whether you live in a rural area or in an urban city like myself, you get an exceptional standard of service both at the neighbourhood level, at regional level, and then of course with national policing through the new National Police Service that will keep all of us safe.
Mark Pritchard.
We all want to see more effective and efficient policing, but I'm not quite sure whether this white paper is going to deliver it. The devil clearly will be in the detail. The Home Secretary will know West Mercia Police is a high-performing police force covering Shropshire, Herefordshire and Worcestershire. Can she reassure my constituents that she understands the difference between, for example, West Midlands urban policing, which she obviously oversees and lives within that jurisdiction, and the rural, semi-rural policing of forces like West Mercia? And can I just say to her that regional counter-terrorism, in my experience, works very well in the West Midlands, which oversees West Mercia as well, and so does the National Crime Agency under its excellent leadership. And finally, just on reforms, can I ask her to look at reviewing the 101 service and its effectiveness and efficiency? And finally, the Official Secrets Act. The Official Secrets Act covers some police officers, but not all. Is this not an opportunity to ensure that all police officers are covered by confidentiality and some secrecy? Thank you.
Well, look, what I say to the honourable gentleman is, and I do respect his views, it's precisely because I understand the difference between the areas that he represents and has raised compared to those that I represent that I brought in this new model for policing. I believe that this is the right model to ensure that wherever you are in the country, whether in Shropshire or whether in the inner city of Birmingham, it doesn't much matter, because you will always have excellent, high-quality neighbourhood policing, a local force that is entirely committed to policing their local area day in, day out, dealing with all of the crimes we know are tearing at the fabric of our communities, with regional forces that can do the specialist investigations at scale so that you don't get a different standard of service, which depending on the part of the country you're in, and a national police service that I do believe will bring in the NCA and counter-terror policing in a way that will make sure we are all kept safe. We're the only major country that doesn't have these two functionalities together. I think it is the right change to make.
And with a nice short question and a nice short answer, Mohammed Yassin.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the government's reform agenda in support of our mission for safer streets. In Bedfordshire, Operation Bosun and Costello, tackling guns, gangs, organised drugs, have driven major arrests and a 15% fall in antisocial behaviour in Bedford Town Centre, backed by £7.3 million in special grants. So can I ask the Secretary of State to commit in maintaining these grants or integrating them into core police funding to ensure effective, evidence-based local crime reduction programs continue to protect our communities?
Secretary.
We'll say more about specific funding in the coming days, so I won't take the temptation to say any more about that now. And as we make clear in the white paper, as we roll out a new structure with regional forces, we will of course then take the opportunity to review the police funding formula.
Sir Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It must be right to look at this white paper with an open mind, and I commend the Home Secretary's willingness to listen. If I may make just 2 points for her to consider. The first is that what we are really most concerned about in Royal Sutton Coldfield is that neighbourhood policing, community policing, should be accountable, dependable, reliable and accessible. And we note that all policing is above all local. Secondly, will she bear in mind that strong leadership is the key to policing? We need to find ways of bringing in fresh blood at senior levels. Will she make it easier for this to happen? And in particular, there should be a way of encouraging senior officers in the armed forces to look at transferring to senior positions within the police.
Home Secretary.
Well, the honourable gentleman is a Birmingham neighbour of mine. I always take what he has to say seriously. Let me assure him I agree with him absolutely on everything he said in relation to neighbourhood policing and its responsiveness to the local communities that they serve. And the Blunkett Review will shortly report, and they've been looking at leadership in policing, and I'm sure that those recommendations will touch on some of the issues that he has raised.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The litany of failures under the Conservatives of Staffordshire Police is too long to mention in the short time for this question. But I would say to the marital friend, the Home Secretary, she's mentioned about local accountability being done through mayors and police and crime boards. Where you are going to have mayors that are in areas smaller than the likely police forces, is she able to say a bit more about how she anticipates that accountability working? And on the local policing areas, is she able to say what accountability there will be for those? Because in Stoke-on-Trent, we've got a really good police service, works well with local partners, but that accountability could be lost if it's moved to big regional figureheads.
Let me assure my honourable friend, accountability both at the national level and at local level is absolutely critical to these reforms. And of course, once the review has reported on what the shape of those new regional forces should be, we will be able to say more on the exact relationship between areas where there is a crossover of mayoralties as well as for local policing and crime boards. But it's absolutely the intention that at every level there will be obvious accountability for local responsiveness and local performance, and right up to the national level, where of course the Home Secretary will have new powers going forward.
Liz Saville-Roberts.
Please could I first refer the House to my register of interests, specifically my role as the co-chair of the Justice Union's parliamentary group. The White Paper recognises that changes to policing governments on crime prevention in Wales will have to reflect the existence of over a quarter of a century of devolution. Meanwhile, 3 independent commissions have recommended that justice and policing be devolved to Wales. And considering that around 56% of our police funding in Wales already comes from devolved sources, does she not agree that this package of radical changes is exactly the right time for the devolution of policing to Wales?
Secretary.
No, I do not.
I'll call Jack Abbott and then Steve Darling. Jack Abbott.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I warmly welcome the Home Secretary's statement today. I'd like to highlight 2 initiatives, Clear Hole Build and Operation Machine Eyes. Government initiatives working with our hard-working police force, which make a real difference in Ipswich. I can see some of the parallels with some of the proposals that the Home Secretary's laid out when it comes to local policing. While we did receive a very welcome multi-million-pound uplift in police funding, however, we have been majorly shortchanged over the years. We are one of the worst local authorities and have been for over a decade when it comes to funding. So can the Home Secretary assure me that these changes will result in extra resources that we desperately need to continue the good progress that we've made in Ipswich and Suffolk?
Secretary.
Well, we'll say more about the funding settlement for the coming year in just a few days' time, but he will know, and I hope he will welcome, that every force, wherever they are in the country, will see a real terms increase in funding. The wider questions about the police funding formula we propose to deal with once we have the review and we know what the recommendations are in terms of regional forces going forward. That will be the appropriate time to review the police funding formula, which we will do.
Steve Darling.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Basic Command Unit that includes Torbay does not have services such as firearms officers or roads officers. Will the Minister give clear guidance that all Basic Command Units should include such disciplines?
Home Secretary.
Well, going forward in the new model, of course, it will be very obvious where these disciplines sit, whether that's the National Police Service or within regional forces, right down to the neighbourhood level. The intention of the new model is to make sure that wherever you are in the country, you get an excellent quality of service, including all of the capabilities that are needed to keep our communities safe.
Steve Race.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the statement and the improvements to policing that I'm already seeing in Exeter thanks to the 13% increase in funding, meaning 171 officers newly on the streets across Devon and Cornwall. As the Secretary of State consults on police force structures, can she confirm that strong local policing and operational leadership will remain core to the service? And can she also confirm that we remain committed to improving standards, very important across Devon and Cornwall, both of which are key to public confidence in policing too?
I can give him that assurance, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I can say to my honourable friend that the responsibility for high standards across the whole of our service will in future sit with the National Police Service. But in the meantime, I'm working closely with police leaders everywhere to make sure that our standards are as strong as they can possibly be, so no matter where you are in the country, you get the quality of service that you all deserve.
Wendy Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Under this government's watch, in the West Midlands, we now face a £41 million black hole, which will lead, we are told, to a reduction of policing numbers. So I'd like to ask the Home Secretary, under these new reforms, how will she ensure that we actually see a net increase in the West Midlands, particularly in my constituency of Aldridge Brownhills?
Secretary.
Well, let me tell the Honourable Lady that under this government, we've increased funding to forces by close to £2
The Party has gone. The Conservative Party has left the building. That is why today I am announcing, and I have announced, that I've resigned the Conservative whip and my membership, one that's endured 30 years, a party in which I grew up, in which I supported my mother as a local councillor for 16 years, when she stood as a Conservative MP herself, and on which I've been an MP for a decade. Now, I don't leave the Conservative Party with malice or anger or bitterness. That passed a long time ago. But with an element of sadness when I look at what a once great party has descended into. So I have mixed feelings today. I am sad about leaving a political family, especially those members, friends and supporters in Fareham and Waterlooville, people with whom I've worked for a decade for the local community. They are all unsung heroes. And I understand that many of them, some of them, will be feeling hurt by my decision. And I regret that my decision may have hurt them. And I apologise for that. But I very much hope that many of them will join me at Reform UK. And I'm also incredibly excited and honoured and feel very lucky to be joining Reform UK today. You see, there is another way. We can rescue our country and turn it around. We just need a leader in whom we can believe. Someone who hasn't twisted and turned with the wind. Someone who hasn't jumped on the next passing trend just to get votes. The thing with Nigel is that he just keeps going. They try and shut him down. They try to demonise him. They throw all sorts at him. They all try and vilify him. But he doesn't get blown off course. You don't seem to be blowing him off course. You here in the room, the journalists, the media, the mainstream establishment. He actually gets stronger. That is remarkable. It's actually unique in British politics, which is packed with craven, superficial careerists, particularly the Conservative Party. He's not in politics for titles or for promotions. He is in politics to actually do something, to actually mean something, to actually save the country that he loves. He has this unique power to articulate our fears, our anger, our frustration, but also the direction of where we can head to. He's speaking for so many millions of people right now, millions of people who are smeared as racist just for wanting their country back, millions of people vilified as bigots just for wanting to stop the boats, millions of people who are being judged by the establishment just because they want more safety, more fairness and more security in the country they thought they could call home. And that steadfast, determined courage is exactly what Britain needs more of. And that's why I'm very proud to support Nigel. And he's the only man that I trust to lead this party as Prime Minister. And I'm going to do everything in my power to get him there. You won't find tweets by me criticising Nigel Farage. You won't find any speeches by me on the internet having a go at him, because I have largely agreed with Nigel for years. And in fact, there are times over the past few years where I have done and said things as Home Secretary or Attorney General. My Conservative colleagues have criticised me, and Nigel Farage has been the only mainstream politician to come out and support me. He speaks for me, and I know that he speaks for thousands of people in Fareham and Waterlooville and millions of people around the country. He has built a formidable operation. This is more than a political party. It is a movement. It is a mission that is serious, deadly serious about saving Britain. He has assembled a fantastic team of brilliant minds, accomplished individuals, all of whom are making an invaluable contribution right now. And I am proud and excited to join him today. Thank you.
Well, Suella, thank you. I think that message was pretty clear and unambiguous, and I thank you for it. Brilliant. Right. Unlike the other parties, we take questions from the press. No, really, we do, honestly. We're going to start with Chris from the BBC.
Thank you both. Chris Mason, BBC News, and with apologies for the 6 o'clock news being imminent. Once I've heard your answers, I'll have to make an early departure. Nigel Farage, you're amassing quite the collection of folk who were very close to Liz Truss, including serving in her cabinet. Is that a helpful association? And if I may, would you commit to putting your latest recruit sitting next to you into your government were you to win the general election? And Suella Braverman, in their response to your defection, your former party said the Conservatives did all we could to look after Suella's mental health, but she was clearly very unhappy. What do you make of that? Thank you both.
Thank you. Chris, I'm very pleased to say that Robert Jenrick resigned as a minister, that Suella did her best to fight from within, but failed. Whichever cabinet they were in, and it's difficult to keep up really, isn't it, because they change leaders so often, isn't relevant. What's relevant is we need experience of people on the front line. That has been the one commodity that we've been short of. We need people who've been there, who can share with us how government works, or perhaps more accurately, how government doesn't work. We also will only accept people who are prepared to put their hands up and admit that despite their best efforts, they failed. And I think you've heard that pretty clearly today. I've also set a deadline of May the 7th, after which we will not be accepting defectors. We'll then be looking for people to come into politics from outside of it, people with expertise in business, railways, energy, whatever it may be, because my view, and it's an outside view, but my view is you wouldn't run a company putting somebody in charge of a major department over which they had no knowledge at all and then reshuffle them 12 months later. So do you want to answer what they've been saying about you, or should we move on?
Well, it is a bit pathetic. As I said, it says more about them than it does me. I'm not really going to dignify it. It's, I'm afraid, just more sorry signs of a bitter and desperate party that's in free fall.
Yeah, and I thought the comments yesterday of Priti Patel were fairly extraordinary as well. Very extreme in every way. And I think these are the last thrashings of a dying political animal, is my view. Chris from GB News.
Chris Hope, GB News. Nigel Farage, we were last here in this room with you 10 days ago. You said then, get ready for a Labour defector. That was last Tuesday. That never happened. Are these Labour defectors scared off by you hiring right-wing politicians like Suella Braverman? And to Suella Braverman, did you jump before you were pushed? Is that what drove you to make this choice today? And how can Nigel Farage succeed where all those other top politicians have failed to do what you want?
Well, Suella wasn't going to be pushed. I mean, the reason she joined and the reason you didn't know about it is because basically there were only two people that understood. And actually, I think your husband was involved too. But you know, we didn't tell anybody. You know what it's like in politics? You tell someone something in confidence, they will always share it with at least one other person. And that person thinks, well, no, I've been told, perhaps I'll tell somebody else. And that's why so few things in politics ever stay secret. It's why cabinets leak like sieves, all meetings leak. And generally, over the years, when I've done manoeuvres like this, we've managed to keep them under the radar. There are one or two in the party who criticise me by saying, why didn't you tell me first? Well, because I like surprises. I like to produce jack-in-the-boxes, and I think today was one of them. I mean, did you expect this defection?
Yes.
Did you? Oh, really? Well, I tell you what, when the next one comes, on this or any other event, let me know, because I'll get down Ladbrokes with you, and we'll all make a very great deal of money. Didn't happen yet. Didn't happen yet. It will. We are talking to a number of people who've held senior positions in the Labour Party, and yes, they will come. But, you know, as I said with the Robert Jenrick move, you know, I was 65-35 confident he'd come. in a few weeks' time, but you never quite know until it's done. But Kemi did us a big favour on that one. OK, let's go to Amanda from Sky News.
Right,
Sorry.
OK. Yeah. Listen, you're asking about when. I've never been divorced, but I have observed a lot of divorces, and it feels a bit like a divorce. I've been in a relationship. There's been a lot of and frequent betrayal on the part of one party, and yet I've stayed loyal. I've tried to make it work. We didn't go for counselling, but I've tried to give it a good go. Sometimes there have been some good weekends and some good times, and then sometimes it's all fallen back. And gradually, there's an erosion of trust and a breakdown of affiliation, love, even if you call it that. But yeah. And eventually, there's a final straw. There's a moment when you think, right, this is it. And I think for me, that final straw has actually come in the last few days, because the Tory party has exposed itself to be incredibly toxic and a circus and a very unhealthy place. The text messages were released by the, I think Robert Jenrick released them, but they were text messages by the Chief Whip, so I saw what she really thought about me, which is she wanted me out. There now seems to be a concerted effort, you could call it a witch hunt, within the Conservative Party to hound out right-wingers. And, there's been some unprovoked, unjustified, hostile briefing directed towards me from the leader's office. There comes a point when you say, this is not the partnership for me, and I deserve better.
Excellent lot. Amanda from Sky News.
Thank you. Amanda Acass from Sky News. First, a question to Nigel Farage. You now have 23 current or former Tory MPs who've defected. You said you don't want to be the Tory party 2.0. So how many is too many? And is there anyone in the Tory party that you wouldn't be prepared to accept?
Yes. Yes. And there are people who've approached us that we've said we don't think it's appropriate. Because, number one, they're not prepared to be contrite enough about what happened, especially in that last government since 2019. And secondly, because I took the view that they were viewing us as a lifeboat, that we were better for them than they would be for us. And my qualifications for this are very, very simple. They have to be contrite about what they did in government. They have to be prepared to put their shoulder to the wheel and actually help us and be an asset to us. And they have to come before the 7th of May. And after the 7th of May, none of you will ask any questions about defections or whether we're becoming like the Tory party, because that moment will have passed.
Braverman, why now? The big betrayals that you listed earlier all happened under the previous Tory government. Why has it taken you so long to make this decision? The party has now adopted your policy on ECHR. What was it that finally tipped you over the edge? Was it this defection deadline day in May?
Well, as I just said, I've been thinking about it for some time. I've been politically homeless for the best part of 2 years. I have not had confidence in the Conservative Party, really, but I have tried to see whether it might change, tried to give it some time, and it's events over the last few days, really, which have tipped me over the line. The fact that it is a very toxic environment. There is now a concerted effort to expunge from the party anyone who wants robust borders, who wants a tough approach to law and order, anyone on the right of British politics. There is a witch hunt. And they are, demanding pledges of allegiance to the supreme leader, it seems, within the party at the moment. And unless you're willing to pledge and vow lifelong allegiance, you're out. That's not the way to run a party. That's insecure, weak, and scared. It is not an environment where right-wingers have a home.
Yeah, and they're panicking, of course. They're panicking. Who next? That's the conversation. Who next? And I know who next. But we'll leave that for another day, shall we? Let's go to Shabab from ITV News.
Shihab Khan, ITV News. Mr Farage, we speak to voters up and down the country who often say to us that they view you and Reform UK as an alternative different to the mainstream political parties. How do you continue to make the argument that you are a different party and an alternative while you continue to accept Tory defectors? And question to you, please, Suella Braverman. Your critics argue that you attempted to become leader twice of the Conservative Party. You sat round the cabinet table, and part of the reason you have decided to join Reform UK is because you've seen that your career in the Conservative Party has come to an end. How much of this was about your own personal ambitions?
This is about, as a politician, what is essential is that you believe in the cause that you are fighting for. It is hard work being a politician. There's long hours, it's physically demanding. You have to really believe what you're doing. And I have not believed in the Conservative Party for some time. That is why I just said, at the general election campaign, I basically spent it apologising to people. That's not how you campaign. That's not how you try and persuade people to your cause. And so I have had a lot of problems with the Conservative Party for some time. Have things changed since the new leader has come? Not really. All the same people as before are largely running the party. And on some key instances, there's been a failure to step up. So, for example, the leader says, well, the local elections must go ahead because we believe in democracy. But then when Tory-run local councils delay their elections, she doesn't do anything. She doesn't step in. She doesn't rebuke them. She doesn't criticise them. She lets it happen. Actions speaking louder than words. There were a group of Tory MPs a few months ago who signed a letter to the Prime Minister saying that he should recognise Palestine even before the hostages have been released. Not Conservative Party policy, a slap in the face to the victims of October the 7th, and not how the Conservative Party should be treating its friend, our ally Israel. Did the Conservative Party leader do anything? No. She ignored it, didn't say anything. There were Tory Party MPs who had campaigned for the return of El Fattah to the United Kingdom. Robert Jenrick exposed this scandal and campaigned rightly that he shouldn't be coming to the United Kingdom. Did the Tory leader say anything about those Tory MPs who campaigned for this extremist to be back in our country? No. So, there's a lot of performative conservatism, as I said, but when push comes to shove, they flee the scene.
In some ways, your question's quite hard to answer because I can't win. And if we're a group of people that have never been in politics before, never held office before, you'll say to me, well, you're a bunch of nobodies with no idea what you're doing. And then if we recruit some people who've got genuine experience at cabinet level and are being on the front line, you say, well, you look like all the others. I would say this to you. We are distinct and different in every single way. We are radical. And I'll tell you what the key difference is. And it's this. The Prime Minister insists that Britain is not broken. The Leader of the Opposition insists that Britain is not broken. We absolutely insist that Britain is broken. And I don't think, until you're prepared to accept the depths to which we've sunk and are sinking fast, economically, socially, societally, unless you understand and accept those things, then it's impossible to get into the mindset to be radical enough to change them. And it's like the others want to sort of fiddle with the plumbing. We think you need a completely brand new boiler and a brand new system. And so people, people here, like Suella, who've in a way been arguing Britain is broken for a very, very long time. And what she's lost isn't her career within the Conservative Party. What she's lost is her battle to get the Conservative Party in the place that she thought it ought to be. And in the end, she's given up with that battle and come to join us. And frankly, we've agreed publicly on most things for 10 years, 11 years. So I think she'll fit in very, very well. And as I say, after May the 7th, you won't be asking that question because we won't be having anybody in after May the 7th. May the 7th is the day that redefines British politics. Despite the fact they've cancelled 29, or could it be with Essex, 30 sets of elections, both parties to save their own skins. Despite those cancellations, May the 1st is going to reconfigure British politics. I doubt the Prime Minister will survive very long beyond it, with or without Andy Burnham in Parliament. And I believe that on May the 8th we'll wake up and the Conservative Party will have ceased to be a national political party. And from there on, we'll be charting our own course, but doing so with people in our team who know what it's like to live and work on the front lines of government. Moving on to Francis from Channel 4 News.
Thank you. Francis Reid, Channel 4 News. Mr Farage, you heavily criticised Suella Braverman over immigration when she was Home Secretary. I'm wondering what's changed exactly and why her performance would be any different under you. Suella Braverman, Mr Farage was scathing about you when you were Home Secretary, and he said this morning he's taken you in because you admit you got things wrong. Do you accept that version of events? And what, in your opinion, did go so horribly wrong? Does that include the Rwanda bill, perhaps?
Short of wearing sackcloth and ashes, it's quite difficult to see, frankly, what Suella could have done today to have apologised any more for the actions of the last government. So I'm not buying that at all. And if you took every public pronouncement I'd made against Suella over the years, the fact that you find one comment where expressing my frustration at stopping the boats, right? But I said publicly, I would, had I been a Conservative MP, I mean, they'd never have me, obviously, but had I been a Conservative MP, I would have voted for his leader. You'll find a string of complimentary comments, I promise you.
There's a video on YouTube called The Truth About Suella Braverman that Nigel put out a few years ago. It's after I think I was talking about the invasion on our southern border.
Yeah.
And when I said that as Home Secretary, countless Tory MPs had heart palpitations and they all started to wobble and they started criticising me and saying it was divisive and it was wrong and it was extremist and racist. Nigel Farage put out a little video called The Truth About Suella Braverman where he said, thank you. I called it an invasion many years before. It's finally very heartening to see a Conservative Home Secretary echo my words. He was the only mainstream British politician to back me up at the time. My own party colleagues couldn't even bring themselves to defend me. It says it all.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Channel 4 News' coverage this evening will reflect all of that. Accurately and fully of this, I have absolutely no doubt at all. And anyway, it's the Ruth Davidsons in charge now, be in no doubt about that. Noah from The Sun.
Thank you, Noah from The Sun. There's been a lot of talk today about how Britain is broken, but I was wondering, Nigel, what makes you optimistic about the future and if you have any positive hopes in terms of politics going forward. And Suella, I was wondering if you could expand a bit on the connection that you were drawing between the hate marches. And it is interesting that you actually coined that term, and in the beginning it received so much backlash, but now it is pretty much being adopted by a lot of people. What is your link between the failure of the Conservatives to crack down on the hate marches as they were going on, and then what happened in Manchester, because you seem to imply some sort of connection? Thank you.
If you saw our veterans event this morning, what did you see? Wild enthusiasm, optimism. You go to the UKIP conference, which we had in Birmingham in September. It was more like a festival than a party conference. Reform, sorry. I've led so many parties, it's difficult to keep up. You see an optimism. There's no question, there's no doubt about it. And why? Because they believe we can turn it around. And actually, if you look, you see, for example, what Rudy Giuliani did in New York. He turned one of the most dangerous cities in America to one of the safest cities in America. We've seen economic turnarounds before. We believe that with the right mentality, with the right level of determination, and with the courage to fight those that will oppose change, that it can be done. And our voters and our supporters do as well. And if this was a negative political movement, I would not be here. I've got stacks of other things that I can go and do in my life. I'm doing this because I believe we can and will turn it around.
On the hate marches, they are a damning indictment of failing policing in this country. And they should have been banned when I urged them to be banned around Armistice Day. The fact that a march went ahead on Armistice Day, desecrating the memory of our war dead, is a national disgrace. And in the lead up to that, I was pleading with the Prime Minister, basically. I had lost confidence in the Met Commissioner on his strategy and tactics for policing those marches. They had got out of control. Every week there was another apology from the Met Police. They were chanting jihad on the streets of Britain. Jewish people had to stay locked up for fear of attack and physical assault. It was a disgrace. And what we've had is, over the 2 years, a normalisation of this extremism on our streets, a normalisation of anti-Semitism, and a flagrant display of two-tier policing, whereby the police turn a blind eye to the pro-Palestinian hate marches and let them scale war memorials, fire off flares, cover their face, chant anti-Semitic chants, and yet a very heavy-handed response to other kinds of protests which tend to connect to the right of British politics. Two-tier policing writ large, a total disgrace and contributory to the undermining of public confidence. And I warned that someone would be killed in 2023. And it is a great shame that 2 years later, members of the Jewish community were murdered on the streets of Britain.
Adam from Guido Fawkes.
Thank you. Adam Cherry, Guido Fawkes. You mentioned Andy Burnham earlier. So, simple question. If Labour does change leader at some point, would they lose their democratic mandate, and should they then call an immediate general election?
I think that was a very likely proposition, and I suspect that's the crisis that will engulf British politics at some point this summer. I think the May the 7th results are going to be so catastrophic for Labour, particularly in places like Wales. You know, Keir Hardie, Merthyr Tydfil, Nye Bevan, Michael Foot, Neil Kinnock, constituencies they've held ever since 1918, councils they've run, let alone devolved power for 26 years, giving us the worst NHS, the worst education in the whole of the UK. Now, opinion polls vary, campaigns change. But if the last measures and markers showing Labour at 10% in Wales, virtually disappearing in really what we could call their historic political homeland, then I do think Starmer is going to face a crisis, and I do think the country will scream out for an election. I mean, we could argue that all the while they've got a majority, they can soldier on. But, the other factor in this, and I've said this before, the other factor in this is the state of the economy. And it's much, much worse than anyone believes. You go out to provincial Britain, you go out to small-town Britain. I was in Llandudno a few days ago. I really got the feeling it was on the edge of a cliff, that the local economy was literally on the edge of a cliff. And so even if Andy Burnham thinks we can ignore the bond markets, sorry, matey, but in reality you can't. So, yeah, there is a big crisis coming for this Labour government before too long. Pieter from the Daily Telegraph.
Peter here from the Daily Telegraph. The 2024 election showed us quite clearly the country's had enough of the Tories and wanted them out. Now, you might say that those that are defecting are the best of the party, they're the true patriots. But how do you convince those reform voters who despise the Tories that those politicians wearing a different rosette now represent change? And if I can just throw out a second question, there have been 22, 23 defections. Would you be able to humour us by giving us an indication of how many Tories have approached you to join? Is it 30, 40, or more than 50? Just to get a sense of what you're saying no to.
You'd be surprised how remarkably, wonderfully forgiving human beings are, provided people stand up and repent. And we've seen acts of repentance from a number of former Conservative MPs. But also, you've got political consistency here. Most of our reform supporters and voters would have agreed with the Spartans and what they did, and there are two of them sitting in this room. And without the Spartans, the Brexit Party couldn't have won the European elections of that year and couldn't have got rid of Theresa May. So you could actually argue that in some ways we've been working in concert, albeit in different parties, but now the time has come to unite, not around campaigns, but around a political party and movement that intends to go ahead and not win individual issues, but win the next general election. And I think you'll find our voters and our supporters understand that. Now, if Jeremy Hunt approaches and wants to join and I accept him, we might have a problem. But don't worry, folks, don't panic, Lee. It's going to be okay. None of that's going to happen. So there is an intellectual consistency and political messaging from these people. And, Jenrick might have been on the other side 10 years ago, but pretty clearly everything he's done for the last few years is aligned absolutely with what we stand for and what we do. So there is a political consistency in this. I'm not going to speculate on numbers, but I mean, the truth is, of this current parliamentary Conservative Party, there's only a relatively small percentage that we would even consider accepting. And it's just as simple as that. Let's go to Christian from the Express.
So a number of Liz Truss's cabinet are among the defectors that you've received. I believe earlier today you said that Ms Truss herself joining was merely unlikely. Do you not think it would be helpful for Reform UK to rule out her joining, given the anger amongst the general public about the impact of her mini-budget? You've now also got a hell of a lot of big personalities within the party. Is there a risk that you're going to go from a one-man band to Fleetwood Mac? And can you clarify when you'll be announcing your shadow cabinet?
I can't win, can I? I can't win. Either you're a one-man band or you're an uncontrollable rabble. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Look, I said it was very unlikely that Liz Truss would apply to join the party. Right? Boom. Said. Done. There's one thing we can be grateful for from that budget. We learned a very valuable, fundamental lesson. That you cannot be a tax-cutting party in a period of continual deficit without cutting government spending. That's the big takeaway. That's the big lesson. That's the bit that Kwasi Kwarteng, bright though he is in many other ways, that's the bit they got horribly wrong, and the markets wouldn't wear it, and many of their own supporters wouldn't wear it. And that is why, contrary to the absolute baloney that you'll hear from Kemi Badenoch or Priti Patel, far from us being a welfarist party, we've already proposed some of the, in fact, the biggest cuts to welfare expenditure ever seen in British political history. And we will need to cut welfare spending considerably. One, so that we are free to start controlling the deficit and to bring down taxes and to incentivise people. And secondly, because there is absolutely no question that our spending on defence, albeit spent in the right way, has now become absolutely imperative. And we need some very, very fresh thinking. I'm told the MOD are slowly waking up to the importance of drones and modern battlefield technology, but we just got to face it unavoidably. We will need to be spending more on defence. So I think the balance of that is right, and I think the Kwarteng budget has actually done us a very, very big favour to tell us that at some point you have to start cutting government spending. Right, let's keep going. We're only halfway through, good Lord. Daisy from the Times, you're enjoying yourself far too much. Daisy from the Times.
Thank you. For you, Nigel Farage, with Burnham being blocked from standing in Gorton and Denton, it's looking like it could be a two-horse race between the Greens and Reform UK. As that vote comes up in a month, we heard earlier, could you spell out what your lines of attack will be? And for Suella Braverman, do you have hopes to serve in a Reform UK cabinet, potentially under a role like Home Secretary? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's the 26th of February. They've called an absolute snap election, and that's so they can get the postal votes out, they hope, more quickly than any other party can mobilise. That's what it's all about. Had Burnham stood, our chances of winning would have been considerably reduced, because he would have been the anti-Starmer candidate. I believe that Reform are now the anti-Starmer candidate. Only a Reform victory can get rid of Starmer as Prime Minister. He is the most unpopular Prime Minister in living memory. I think the last approval poll I saw had his approval rating only on 11%. And I think this could well become a referendum about Keir Starmer and his future. I expect to see a strong reluctance from Labour voters to turn out on the day. It'll depress the overall turnout in this by-election. I suspect there'll be votes that go to the left. Don't forget George Galloway's Workers' Party got 14% in that constituency in the last general election. Plus there's going to be an attempt by Greens, etc. And I think our prospects of winning that by-election are considerably better than they were 24, 36 hours ago. But like Runcorn, it ain't going to be easy. These have been Labour seats, culturally, historically, for a very, very long time. So it may well be close, but I think we're in with an extremely good chance. Anti-Starmer, referendum on the Prime Minister, that's one of the key campaign messages. We'll be launching the campaign in the constituency at 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Launching our candidate tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. in the constituency. Thank you. Jason from the Mail.
Hi, thanks. Since we're talking about Burnham, I mean, Labour started the day having a terrible time. You seem to have taken the spotlight off them today with this sort of attack. Why are you doing Labour a favour? And Suella, can I ask you, you said, Nigel's views are shared by thousands of your constituents. Are you going to have a by-election there? I just find it to come back to this sort of Conservative attack. They seem to be suggesting you've got to be mad to join Reform. Are they right?
Well, I have to say, the lower they sink with their criticisms, the more it tells us about them. And I thought Priti Patel yesterday was, frankly, pretty appalling stuff. Pretty appalling stuff. And then the personal attacks on Suella today. I mean, frankly, I think we've dealt with those as effectively as we're going to this afternoon. We're not going to labour the point. Suella said it says more about them than it does about us. We will not sink into the gutter in these debates. I put it as simply as that. We are not doing Labour a favour. We're building an election-winning machine by uniting the centre-right of British politics around reform. That is what's happening. And I know that at the moment, your newspaper's current editorial line seems to think there should be a merger, that Suella and Ruth Davidson should all get together. And I just don't see it happening. I don't see why it would happen. And also, why would we trust the party not to break its promises and, frankly, let us down again? Anything to add?
Listen, I believe in by-elections, definitely. And if I were leaving the Labour Party to go to the Conservatives or government to go to opposition, I think there's a very strong case there for a by-election. But as you heard, I spent the last general election apologising for being a Conservative. And I believe that I won that seat despite the Conservative rosette, not because of it. A lot of polling said that I was going to lose that seat. I put out leaflets saying that we needed to leave the ECHR, which was not my party policy at the time. And the reality is that now that I'm a Reform UK MP, the people of Fareham Waterlooville will have a more authentic Member of Parliament who can speak in alignment with her party much more freely and much more authentically.
Thank you. Samara from Talk.
Thank you, Samara from Talk. Given the concerns raised about sites like military barracks in Crowborough, where illegal migrants were basically smuggled in the middle of the night last week, I was down there and the people are just basically enraged and frightened. Would a Reform government ensure that people in the UK that are here illegally are not free to move around unchecked? And given you won't be able to shut down sites like Crowborough on day one, how would you enforce that?
The residents of Crowborough would be far less concerned if those young men who illegally come to Britain, willfully discarding their iPhones and their passports in the Channel at the 12-mile line, about whom we know absolutely nothing, they'd be far less concerned, the residents of Crowborough, if they were kept behind locked gates. They'd rather they weren't there at all, but the real concern is that these people will be moving freely out within the community. And I'm sorry if people don't like it, but if you allow large numbers of young men to come into Britain from countries with cultures that treat women not even as second-class citizens, don't be surprised when you get incidents such as that caused the uproar in Epping last year. These are major, fundamental, cultural differences. And you know what? Joe Public has absolutely had enough of it. Promise after promise. Stop the boats. We're going to deal with this. We're going to deport people. And I think the real answer lies with the ECHR. But I think the lady sitting to my right knows rather more about this than I do.
Nigel said it all. There's nothing more I can add. Listen, the fundamental crux of the problem is we need to regain control over a lot of our detention powers, our deportation powers, and how we empower the state to deliver the swift removal of illegal migrants. That's the cause of this problem we're seeing. And leaving the ECHR is the first necessary step. And I set out the plan, the legal and policy strategy on how to do that earlier last year. And I was very pleased and grateful that Richard Tice supported and endorsed the plan. It's ready to go.
Agnes from LBC, we're rattling through now.
Aggie Chambray, LBC. Suella Braverman, you said that it was the first time in years that you can finally believe in something. Do you remember when you stopped believing in the Tories? For example, did you believe in the Tory government when you were Home Secretary? And if I may, when you walked into Reform UK HQ this afternoon and saw Lee Anderson and Robert Jenrick and Andrew Rosendale and Danny Kruger, did you have a moment where you panicked and thought you hadn't joined a new party after all?
When did I stop believing in the Conservative Party? Listen, I think, I first felt very concerned about things the day I walked into the first cabinet meeting with Rishi Sunak. And I looked around that cabinet room, and I tell you, the first thought that entered my mind was, I don't fit. Rishi Sunak, Jeremy Hunt, Mel Stride, so many people really on the left of the party dominating that cabinet. And I had a sense of foreboding then, but I tried my best internally, and we saw what happened. I ended up falling out with the Prime Minister. We disagreed on so many things. He sacked me in the end. It's actually remarkable that I lasted that long in that cabinet. I think that was the question, wasn't it? Was there another question? Oh, yeah. Listen, all of the colleagues that I've met today are patriots, they are stalwarts, they've demonstrated immense courage. I am grateful that I can call them friends. And for the first time in years, I feel that I'm part of a great political mission that I can really have confidence and faith and I'm inspired by. And that is something you can't buy.
A movement based on realism with lots and lots of optimism. That is what we are. Will from Bloomberg.
Thank you. Will Standring, Bloomberg. Suella, as a former Home Secretary and Nigel as the man who hopes to deport hundreds of thousands of people from Britain, I'm wondering what your reflections are on the actions of ICE in the US recently. Is this a model for your own deportation push?
Well, they've gone too far, very clearly. And that is why the White House have taken action and sacked Noam today. They've gone too far. I mean, look, if you're confronting a protester that is openly carrying a gun, you've got an issue. But once he's been removed of that gun, then that clearly shouldn't have happened. I mean, look, truth is, there are many, many deaths in America every year caused by the police. There is a different attitude in a country where guns are more freely available. But yes, I think ICE has gone beyond its limits right at the moment. Has it done a good job is another question. And what's really interesting about the numbers that have gone from America is most have gone voluntarily. The ICE agent knocks on the door and says, listen, mate, we know you're here illegally. Please do this the nice way. Go. We'll give you $1,000 spending money when you get there. We'll pay your fare. And by the way, if you want to reapply to come to America under a skills visa, we will not discriminate against you. And that is why over 80% of deportations have genuinely been voluntary. But when it comes to those that refuse to leave, they clearly take tougher action. The deaths that have occurred have both actually been not with illegal immigrants, they've been with protesters. So big rethink needed in how ICE operates, something the White House has acted, I think, really pretty quickly on. Okay, Emilio from Politico.
Hi, thank you very much. Nigel, you said yourself that some of the people that you're welcoming here failed in government. Why do you want so many people who have proved that they can't do the things that you want to do in government around you? Why recruit all these failures if they're failures? And Suella Braverman, you said Nigel doesn't waver and he's consistent. I mean, it's easy to be consistent if you're not in power. And obviously you know that. You've been in government and you've had to compromise. So should you not think slightly differently about him?
Nobody in life that's been successful, nobody that's been really genuinely successful has not had a series of failures along the way. And you know, it's really funny in America, the culture in America, you meet rich, successful people, they boast about their failures. In Britain, you lot write it up as if somehow people have committed a terrible criminal offence because they've had a business that failed. I'm going to say this on Suella's behalf. Her failure wasn't to deliver the policy objective she had, and the same applies for others. The failure was to persuade her own government, her own party, to do the things that were necessary to achieve that success. And this is why ECHR membership is absolutely central to everything we intend to do if we win the next general election. If we don't remove ourselves from ECHR, frankly, when it comes to criminality, when it comes to deportations, when it comes to all these issues, frankly, we will fail unless we leave the ECHR. And I think, you know, for me, excuse me, from the outside, you know, it's the Conservative Party saying it will do Rwanda, saying it will do this and do that, whilst at the same time being in the ECHR, facing both ways at the same time, thinking that appeals to a broader electorate. And our feeling is, you know, when the recent opinion polls show that 74% of Britons in polls think Britain is broken, they're ready for radical action and different thinking.
On consistency, what I find very impressive about Reform UK, and in particular Nigel, is the way in which they have taken what started off as a protest party and made it the leading political party in British politics right now. That has required consistency of message, focused delivery, and very strict adherence to a plan. You don't do that by being inconsistent. You don't do that by being all over the place. And I think that is not something that anybody can really lay claim to. It's something that Reform, led by Nigel, have achieved in a very short amount of time. They're on the way up, and they're only doing that because of very strong leadership, down to consistency.
Helen from PA.
Thanks. Hello, Helen from the Press Association. Suella, you gave us a list of broken promises from the Tories and spoken about the failure of the party, but do you feel that you personally failed, or is there nothing in your eyes that you could have done differently in that role? And then I understand your husband joined Reform and then left last year. Has he rejoined with you this time?
So, listen, I've reflected a lot on being part of the last failed Conservative administration. And as I said, that is why I was the first Conservative MP re-elected to publicly apologise to the nation, taking responsibility. I feel I exhausted every avenue. I tried in the room. I tried politely. I tried quietly. I tried diplomatically. I tried gently. I was ignored. I was blocked. Then I tried a bit more forcefully. I tried loudly. I tried a bit more stridently. And then I was sacked and punished. I'm not quite sure what else I could have done. What I've learned is it's not me. It's the Conservative Party. It's the Conservative Party that can't change. Yes, and listen, my husband has rejoined. He's been supporting for many months now. And it's very nice that we're now both members of the same political party. I think that makes Sunday lunch a bit more amicable.
Very, very good. I was asked earlier this morning, how long had I been negotiating with Suella? I reckon about 10 years, don't you? Because we've always believed in the same things. All right, only three to go. David from the FT.
Hello, David Shepherd from the Financial Times. One for Suella. Nigel's spoken about where ICE went wrong in the United States, saying it went too far. But should people who think, OK, we may be seeing a reform government in a few years' time, should they expect to see agents similar to ICE on the streets of the UK? And quick one for Nigel as well, on the... You said you want to bring in outside expertise into Cabinet. You've got an increasing number of big beasts coming across into the party. Will there be room to accommodate both outside expertise and the people you're bringing in?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the trouble is we could be absolutely ram full, couldn't we, of talent in all directions. No, look, there are so many areas of our life where there are people out there who've been successful, who have knowledge, and who I think will be attracted to a mission that says we've got to turn this country around. I genuinely believe they're out there. We've never done it properly. There was one moment I thought, wow, Gordon Brown's got something right. Not gold, by the way. But, when he appointed Digby Jones, former head of the CBI, successful West Midlands businessman, and he appointed Digby Jones to be a business minister. He was bringing somebody in from outside who'd never been in politics. And I thought, that's really interesting. And I wonder whether British politics would change. I wonder whether we start seeing ministers with real expertise in areas. Since then, sadly, very, very few genuine experts have been brought in. And I very much doubt the elected wing of the party will resent outside expertise coming in. In fact, quite the opposite. It's more likely to make us a successful government.
Listen, I think when it comes to our border security, there is a very strong case to increase the powers of any immigration enforcement officers that we deploy. At the moment, they're hamstrung. They're hamstrung by human rights laws, they're hamstrung by health and safety laws, they're hamstrung by all sorts of needless and obstructive bureaucracy. That's one of the problems as to why we can't deport people. We can't detain them and we can't deport them. And that legal change and that operational change needs to happen.
But it'll be done in a British way.
Yeah.
OK, 2 to go. Priya from The Guardian.
Hi, Priya Baradia from The Guardian. For Nigel Farage, so you've mentioned today your views on ICE going too far, and you've said in the past that the party wants to take a Trump-style approach to immigration. Do you still see Trump? Do you still see Trump?
Have I?
Richard Tice has.
Has he? OK.
Do you still see Trump as a force for good in the world? And for Suella Braverman, I wanted to ask, when was the last time you were able to speak to Kemi Badenoch, and what was that conversation about? Did you feel you could share some of the concerns you had about the party with her?
Illegal immigration in America has been cut by 97% since Trump came to power. We may disagree with his style. We may disagree with some of what he says. But illegal immigration in America has been cut by 97%. Can you imagine how much confidence would be restored in British politics and politicians if we were able to do anything even approaching that?
If only. The last time I spoke to Kemi was when she asked me to vote for her in the leadership contest. She started by apologising to me for saying that I was having a nervous breakdown when, after the general election, I diagnosed the problems with the Conservative Party, saying that we had spoken about being robust and conservative, but governed in a wholly weak and ineffective way. And she had said something disparaging about me. She apologised, and then she asked me to vote for her in the leadership contest.
Right, the last question. The last question of the day goes to Jane from the iPaper.
Thank you. First of all, to Suella, do you think, given her response to your defection today and given the hostile briefings, the Conservatives' response today, do you think the Conservatives are turning back into the nasty party? And to Nigel, do you think this kind of behaviour is going to drive more defections into your arms?
I think it is a very toxic and unhealthy party, and I'm afraid that is the consequence of a failing group of people. They're all panicking. Pretty much every Tory MP I know is incredibly worried about losing their seat, about what is happening to the party. There is a very low morale within the Conservative Party. We are losing members. We are losing elections. We are... They. It's the they. They. It's going to take some time for me to break that habit.
I made the same mistake earlier.
They are losing elections. They are trailing in the polls. They're dying on their feet, and this is just, it's very sad to watch. This was a great party once upon a time. This is the party of Thatcher and the party of Churchill. Look what it's become.
They will get nastier still. They will get nastier still. You see, they know what you probably don't yet know, because they haven't shared it with you. They know what their polling is telling them for May the 7th. They know the cataclysm that they're on the edge of on May the 7th, when they cease to be a national party. And therefore, they will do literally anything they can between now and then to discredit us and to discredit me. And if they've used one or two nasty words about Suella today, that's absolutely nothing compared to what I'm about to get in the course of the next 2 months. But you know something? It'll make absolutely no difference with the electorate whatsoever. They're absolutely sick of the bitterness and infighting, the psychodrama that the Conservative Party put the whole country through for several years leading up to the last election, and which I sense the Labour Party itself is about to be engulfed by. And so, for us going forward, the biggest and most important thing for us to do, particularly with an extended team and some big characters and some big figures, the single most important thing for us to do is, when we have disagreements, we have them behind closed doors. We settle our arguments in private with respect for each other. And if we were to slip into those same mistakes as the other parties, of publicly fighting each other, they view us with similar contempt, which is why we're not going to do it. Thank you, everybody. Next time, bring your popcorn. Thank you. It's a long old press conference, wasn't it?